We have to give a future. We need to give hope. And we have to encourage the Ukrainian population to imagine their future. It is our duty and it is our interest to do this, because if they lose hope, they're no longer going to fight. If they're no longer going to fight,
listen to this.
The geopolitical consequences will be major, and they are not in our interest. So there's a real spin behind this.
I want you to understand something. I'm gonna play this one more time. Stop right there. This was not caught off, like on a hot mic. This wasn't backdoor discussions that someone secretly recorded, and they didn't just say this. This was a short that the WEF posted on their YouTube page. And let's appreciate what exactly is being said in here.
We have to give a future. We need to give hope. And we have to encourage the Ukrainian population to imagine their future. It is our duty and it is our interest.
There's no question. It's in your interest to encourage them to keep fighting a war that many predicted they could never win in the first place. It's in your interest to not push diplomacy. And it's in your interest to lead to the slaughter a generation of Ukrainian men and women.
Do this, because if they lose hope, they're no longer going to fight.
Oh my goodness, if they realize that they should negotiate a peaceful resolution, well then where the hell are we going to launder our money for the next 5 years? If they realize that, okay, cut your losses, maybe. Then they might actually stop fighting. We might actually have peace. That's not good for the military-industrial complex. That's not good for our interests. What are our interests? Using the Ukrainian people as proxies for this war against Russia. We'll fight to the last Ukrainian, says every member of that military-industrial complex. But what he says at the end.
If they're no longer going to fight, the geopolitical consequences will be major, and they are not in our interest.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. If Ukrainians won't fight, the geopolitical consequences will not be in our interest, says this man in his wonderful, avec son accent formidable français. Oh, ce sont des conséquences géopolitiques majeures, putain.
There's a real spin behind it.
Oh, there's a spin behind it. It's a spin. How can you justify slaughtering people? How can you convince them to march off to the slaughter? Well, some of them apparently are not doing it all that willingly, hence the conscription of any fighting-aged male in Ukraine. Okay, well, that really, it's not really on topic for today. I was going to start with Joe Biden calling, everyone who disagrees with him extreme MAGA Republican. That might have been a more appropriate intro video, but it was 4 seconds long. And it wasn't long enough to do the standard intro while everyone trickles in. If you don't know who we are talking with today, you're gonna know. We're gonna do a whole series because this has to be memorialized. It has to be memorialized in real time, documented, so that if and when the proverbial iron fist comes down and tries to memory hole things, people have seen it and people have understood what's happening. Okay, standard disclaimers, or y'all know how this works. Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. We're going to start on YouTube, Viva Frei, Rumble, Viva Frei, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I should have made sure that we are live everywhere, and we are. Live on Rumble, perfect, and we are live on vivabarneslaw.locals.com, perfect. Let me just play it and make sure. Good. And, excuse me, we're going to end on YouTube 20, 30 minutes in, move over to Rumble exclusively. I'll post the entire interview to YouTube later on. It's not a question of, weighing our words. I don't give a crap about that anymore. It's a question of favoring the platforms that actually support and promote free speech, like Rumble. Okay, and the link to Rumble is up there. If anybody wants to come on over right now to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where we have a wonderful community of above average members. Come on over, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Okay, and now, for those of you who don't know, let me refresh here and just make sure we're good. Good. Alfredo Luna, if you don't know who he is, Alpha Warrior. I was going to say Alpha Male, but Alpha Warrior, he's got his own podcast now. He's got his own Rumble channel. He's on another platform, which we're going to talk about at length. But I will let him give us the 30,000-foot overview before we dive into childhood, upbringing, military service, and being the object and the victim of a weaponized persecution. Alpha, are you ready? Sir, At the risk of asking the obvious question, how goes the battle? And while you answer that, I'm going to go to locals and see if our audio levels are matching. 30,000 foot overview. Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll start off with my greatest accomplishment. I'm a dad, so that takes the lead. After that, very interested into the upbringing. I think some people will be surprised, especially some good friends that are watching today. Honored to be here. So thanks for having me. Thanks for the chat, the audience willing to take time to hear my story. Your guys' time is valuable, and you're going to spend it with us. So I appreciate that.
It's amazing because I get a lot of DMs and I get a lot of people saying you got to have people on, and like I have trouble keeping up myself with everything that's going on, and so I stumbled across it. I went to your Twitter feed, and then it was bang, and then I DM and you responded very quickly. So that's how it just happens, and people have to be patient. The lightning strikes, and then life is created. Okay, so what's your real name is?
Full name is Alfredo Luna Jr.
Now let's see this. If there's a junior, there's a senior Alfredo. So, I mean, you're born and raised in America. Where are you from?
Yeah, born and raised in Southern California. Only time I've ever left the country is just to go to war. Then came back right here to beautiful US of A.
That's okay. We're gonna get there. What did your parents do, or what do they do?
My mom, she's worked for special education kids as an assistant teacher for over 35 years. She ended up having a stroke because of this story back in November of 2021. So she has since retired. My dad is independent. He contracts, does all kinds of work, electrical work, landscaping work, all that. Just a normal mom and dad.
And military family?
No. I was the first one. There's a cousin that went into the Marine Corps. A cousin I looked up to. So if anything, that's probably where I knew I was going to go into the military. But I think the influence probably came from him as to which branch I chose.
Now, you said Southern California. Now, I only know that from a song because apparently it never rains in Southern California. Bada bing, bada boom. May I ask the indiscreet question as to how old you are?
I am 44 years old.
Shut the front door. When's your birthday?
September 9th, 1979.
September. So I'm older than you by... Hold on. You're going to turn 45 in September. Yeah, I got 5 months on you. 44. Man, okay. Won't spend too much time on it, but childhood, how many siblings, normal childhood? Were you a troublemaking kid?
No. Actually, I was a nerd jock, or undercover nerd, because I played sports, but I had very strict parents. Both my parents came from, very, very poor backgrounds. So it was just me and my little brother, 6-year difference. They just wanted to make sure that we were set up for success. So yeah, a B in my house was equivalent to an F. That's the way my dad saw things. And and I tested that one time and I learned the hard way. So, very strict upbringing. Parents were very into the church. We were raised not just Catholic, as my mom says, we're raised Roman Catholic. That's the way our household was. And if I got in trouble, it was go read the Bible, and it better not be the story of Noah again.
Can you, I will say a little Jew boy, can you explain what that means? Not just Catholic, but Roman Catholic. Is Roman Catholic a particularly strict variant of Christianity?
It's what part of Catholic is not strict. It's more of the a lot of the old school cultural stuff is really enforced. It's the traditional cathedral style churches. You're going to go through all the sacraments when you're supposed to go through them. My understanding of it, I didn't get into it as much as my parents did.
Now, have you asked your parents what they think of Lil Nas's next cover album? Okay, forget that. We were talking about that yesterday on The Unusual Suspects. Lil Nas likening himself to Jesus. Okay, so you say a closet, well, not a closet nerd, but an undercover nerd, athlete. Are you over 6 feet as well?
No. I'm right at the threshold.
Okay, so you're still a monster as far as I'm concerned. And so, athlete as a kid growing up, I guess the question is always, how do you get into the military? When do you make that decision to go train and then ultimately to go serve?
As far as the athlete part, when I first got into football, it was tackle football, Pop Warner football. This is back in the 80s. I had no business being in there that first season. My mom was the one that I had the neck roll, the arm pads. Like I looked like the Michelin guy out there on the field, and once the team realized like this kid just has no athletic capability, they would just run my way. And this is back when if you paid, you played. So I hated football that first year, And when the season came to an end, and I share this story because I think it'll make sense where a lot of my character came from later on in life. My dad takes me, we go home. I'm getting ready to put my gear away. And he's like, no, we go to the side of the house. And he says, put your helmet back on, put your shoulder pads back on. And I'm like, remember, I'm like 8 years old, maybe 9 by this point. And he says, come and hit me. Big grown man, my father. And, so I just kind of run and he's like, no, hit me. And he's pushing me back. And he does this a couple of times. So now, I got tears in my eyes. I'm like, we just got embarrassed. Now I'm going through this. And he just keeps hit me. And finally, I just get so much anger and juice in me that I'm just like, I'm going to leave it all out here on the side of the house. And I bury my helmet right into my dad's groin stomach area. And he falls down on the ground and he's gasping for air. And now I'm like, I'm about to get the worst whooping of my life. And he kind of sits up and he says, if you can knock me down, there's not one kid out there that you can't knock down. And he just walks inside. And the following year, I went back into football and was the most valuable player every year until I graduated high school. And so that confidence was instilled by my father. But that being said, the strongest one in my family was my mom.
You have to elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
My mom, she, you would say the traditional mom, she took care of us, she raised us, but she also worked. I remember prior to going to, preschool and kindergarten, she would clean apartments in the apartment complex that we lived in. And we'd be right there. She have 80s music on. It's the reason I like 80s music, if everybody's wondering. And she's cleaning walls and cleaning, sliders. And I just watched her work. And then we'd go home. She'd get everything ready for my father. He, put his boots out. And that just never changed. My mom was working from before I woke up until I went to sleep. She was just always working. And then unfortunately, later on in life, year after I graduated, there would be a divorce. And my mom never remarried. She said, like I said, Roman Catholic. She said, well, I'm married to God. And, she continued that her entire life. And it just, anything that was just difficult, she just never showed it. From, my grandma passing away, she's just, the woman's strength is just, it's immeasurable.
You said a year after high school?
Yeah.
High school in America is grade 9?
9th to 12th.
All right. And so this is a year after you're out of high school. So a year after grade 12. So you're 6 years older than your younger brother.
Yes.
So your younger brother's still in the house, living through a split up. Is it nasty? Is it relatively amicable as far as divorces go?
They did a good job of kind of shielding us from it. Hindsight, I think it was probably a lot worse than we probably saw, but we didn't really show a lot in front of us. I mean, the initial night that, it was announced, my mom told us about it. That was a pretty emotional night. But from that point on, there was not a whole lot that they really shared until it was over.
I've got people in the chat might get angry that I have to ask this because I need to know that. So do they sit you down together, or does your mother sit you down alone with your brother and give you the news?
No, I was told separate. I don't know how they told my little brother, but my mom's the one that told me. She actually put my dad on the spot. And she's like, your father got something to tell you. And he was just like, my mom's name's Felicitas, so we call her, everybody calls her Flea. And he's like, Flea. And she's like, no, either you tell your son or I will. And so then that's how I got the news.
That's interesting. Okay. And so you're older, probably easier to deal with this, whether or not you retrospectively understood signs that you didn't put together until it happens. So you graduate from high school, and now for someone who's never served, how does this work? Do you apply to the military? Do you go to university and get into it afterwards? Like, how do you go about that thing?
So, like I said, my parents forced me to do really good in school, and I didn't want to go to college. I was like, now, I'm on my own. I did what they want to do. I want to do life the way I want. I don't want to go to these 4 universities. I know everything, right? I'm 17 and a half years old. I want to work and go to junior college. And so I did. Was still dating a girl through high school, so that had some influence there too. Wasn't the brightest outside of the books, I guess, with that decision. And I wanted to join the military. And man, this is really going to take the alpha title from me, but I'll get it back later. She's like, if you join the Marines, I'm breaking up with you. And I was like, man, I really like this girl. And so I put it off, and we dated longer, ended up having, my first two little girls in 2000, 2001, and 9/11 happens. And I'm actually working as a construction company doing
Let me pause you there. I'm sorry. You had two kids by the time you're 21 years old.
Yep, back to back.
Are you not that well, you're Roman Catholic. Are you married to this girl, or are these out of wedlock children?
At the moment, they're out of wedlock.
All right. Holy cow! I mean, that's wildly young for most people to have kids. You have two kids. I'll ask, accidentally, or was it a plan?
It was accident, surprise. I mean, wasn't being too careful, so wasn't dumb. Knew it was running the risk, but it wasn't planned.
Okay, two kids. How far apart?
1 year. One born February 10th, and the other one born May 2nd.
February 10th, May 2nd, February, March, April, May. Dude, they say you're not supposed to engage in intercourse for 6 weeks after the. Okay, never mind. I'm not getting that far into it. So you have two kids by the time you're 21. Then 9/11 happens.
Yep.
Okay, now I can anticipate where this is going, but please tell us.
Yeah, I'm working a construction job with my dad and my uncle. It's remodeling some apartment complexes, and I'm working on the electrical work. And on the patios, this old couple, and they're watching TV. And obviously, it's early in the morning here on the West Coast, and the news pops on because the first tower got hit. So I just kind of stop, and I'm just looking, at their TV with them, and they know. I mean, they didn't mind, and watch the second thing happen. And then after that, it's everybody kind of knows the news of how it develops. So we go sit down, have lunch with all the workers, and I tell my dad, "Hey, I'm going to the recruiting office tomorrow," and he was adamantly against it. And went the next day. They were closed, surprisingly, and so then I went the day after that. They were open. I enlisted, took the test. They, to summarize this process, they were trying to push me to get into JAG because I scored really, really, really high in the ASVAB.
JAG is what? JAG is what? For those who don't know.
Judge Advocate General.
Okay.
And
I know there's a television show called JAG, but I never watched it.
So that was a good one too. And I said, no, I don't. So they would push it. And I said, listen, I want boots on the ground. I want to go over there and, slay bodies, do the Marine Corps thing of what they did to our country. And so ended up joining the infantry unit, went to boot camp. And then in February, on Valentine's Day of 2003, we landed in Kuwait, and we're in Kuwait just before the war started.
Well, now you're I don't know if she's your wife at the time now, but at least the mother of your two kids' girlfriend who didn't want you joining beforehand, I presume wants you joining even less after 9/11.
Yeah, she was not happy with the decision, but this is when I realized how much I love my country and how much of a patriot I am, and stood my ground and said, well, we're doing this together, or I'm doing it on my own.
How old are your kids at this time? They're 2 and 3 years old, or 1 and
2
2?
and 3. 2 and 3.
Dude, so you have it's unfathomable, not unfathomable, like I can sort of empathize and put myself in your shoes, but it's probably unfathomable to most. Two young kids, 9/11, and you say, I'm signing up, I'm going to go into harm's way, I'm going to leave my family and go fight for what I think is right at this time, and you leave your two young children and join the United States Marine Corps.
I joined, and I remember it would have been the 13th, February 13th, before we flew out. I remember going into the room because we all lived in one little room, and looking at my two little girls that were sleeping on the bed. And she's like, "You want to wake them up to say goodbye?" And I had already said goodbye before they went to sleep. And I said, "No, I don't want to wake them up. They're just going to cry." And I that was the image I burned in my head, and that was the image I kept with me the entire time I was out there.
What's it like leaving? Is she your wife or girlfriend at the time? But like
at that time, now we're married.
Okay. Oh, you're with her now.
Yes, we're together.
So
we stay together.
Holy crap!
No, we're not together anymore.
Oh, not together. Oh, darn. Okay. Well, I was going to say
No.
it had a happy ending, but I guess it had a happy middle. And now it's.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Interstellar?
I have.
Okay. I mean, like, I don't have these experiences, but in as much as a scene of a movie makes you feel it. The scene when Matthew McConaughey's going off and the daughter says, like, I don't want to leave you angry like this, and then she chases him down as he's driving off. I mean, it makes you feel feelings. I mean, it's and I can only imagine that's to some extent what it's like, but exponentially, like on steroids for the person going through it. and you're off and you're gone, and how long? Like, what's this whole process like? You get, what is it like? Where do you go? What do they do with you? When do you come back?
Yeah, we flew from March Air Force Base, which is in Moreno Valley, still Southern California. We did a layover in Maine, and then from Maine we landed in Frankfurt, Germany. And then from Frankfurt, Germany, we landed in Kuwait. And so when you're flying over the Middle East for the first time, especially at night, I mean everything's dark. You can just see, a little bit of the. I mean, as high as you are, you can still see some of the dust trails from vehicles that are driving. But we land in Kuwait, and this is where you realize like this is real. Now the war hasn't started yet, because that starts about a month later. But we land in Kuwait, and it's just like everybody's like, "Get off, get off, get off!" You're like you're dismounting the plane. It's like the movies. There's a line of black SUVs. You go to each one, you give information. You go to the next one, they're doing an eye scan. You go to the next one, you're getting. I think they gave us an ID or took our IDs, one of the two, and then you move into trucks, and then heading off to whatever camp that they sent us to, and then it's a whole lot of training and downtime while you're in Kuwait.
You're there. You're not yet fully trained. You're there for the training.
Well, we're trained, very, very good training, but now you're doing specific training to what you're most likely going to encounter in this kind of geographical area.
Okay, amazing. How long does that training last, and what do you experience when you're out there?
Well, we trained until March 17th. I want to say about a day and a half before the rest of the world knew. We got the news that we're going to be crossing the LOD. And at that point, it's this comms check, it's weapons check, it's health check, it's making sure everybody is at 110% ready to go in battle, checking all the vehicles. So I was lucky. We're infantry scouts, part of a reconnaissance battalion, and it's LAVs. So all the other grunts usually give me a hard time about this because we get taxied around while the other regular grunts have to march. So I always kind of get a little grief for that, but I just say they're jealous. It's okay, you'll survive. And we went, and for those that don't know the LAV, it's like the Army's Bradley, except we have wheels instead of tracks, and it's light armored instead of the better armored.
LAV is light armored vehicle.
Yeah, light armored vehicle. So it has a 25 millimeter Bush cannon on it. It's a beast of a vehicle.
Wow. And so you're out there in the thick of it for how long?
We crossed on March 18th, and I was there until August the 18th of 2003.
So March 2001.
Yeah, March 2000. Oh, I'm sorry, March 2003 to August 18th of 2003.
Was that your? Do they call they call that a tour, right? Or is that like one sequence of service?
So now they'll call them. So eventually they turn into deployments, but in the beginning of the war, this was new for us. So most of us, I actually think almost all of us, this was the first like combat deployment, because I don't think there were very many older guys that were there from the first Desert Storm. But we were told, hey, once you Marines get to Baghdad, we're going to get you guys home. So you tell a bunch of Marines that that's the ticket to get home. A lot of motivation. Well, we needed to get into Baghdad a lot faster than the campaign anticipated. So then it was like, well, no, we got to keep you guys around. And, went. So now, once the war, I want to say once it got to OIF 3, the third phase, is when it starts to turn into regular deployments. You'll get Marines that go out there for 6 months. I think the Army does a year. And now you start having this consistent time pattern. But in the beginning, you don't know. Like, you can be there 6 months, 9 months, a year. Until we establish control, you're not going home.
And how many deployments did you do?
That was it. That was the only combat deployment that I did.
And so you're back home August 2003, and you don't deploy for military again at any point.
No, I don't deploy any. So because I had my 2 little girls at the time, they didn't allow me to go active duty. So they put me part of the reserve battalion. So I was part of 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion in Camp Pendleton. So the first 2/3 of my career was like active duty because of combat. But once that was done, then it went back to the reserve role where you go, once a month, and then the 2 weeks training throughout the year.
Okay, now we're gonna I got some more questions about service, and we're gonna fill in the missing period until you get raided by the FBI over a tweet or over some tweets. Everybody, get your butts on over to Rumble. Link is there. The link is in the pinned comment. And we're going to continue this there, but this will all be replayed on YouTube tomorrow. So doesn't change anything on our end. Alpha, give me 2 seconds, and we're going to end on YouTube now. Now, I won't harp on this for too long, but it's always been something that I find fascinating. You get back from war, August 2003. What is it like reintegrating or integrating, or is it even possible, into civilian life when you get back? Like, what do you do? What's the first day like? What's the healing process like? And is there ever a full healing in terms of what you came from versus trying to get back to citizen life?
Well, I figured you're going to find this part humorous. So I got to come home a month earlier than the rest of my company. And the reason they sent me home on August the 18th was because I had a baby that was due August the 20th. So I got to fly home earlier. So my process was a little bit different than a lot of the other Marines in my company. I get sent back to Kuwait. So I get to fly on the C-130 with the guys into Kuwait. I get to Kuwait, start doing a deprocessing process, which is just making sure that everybody knows where you're going, everything's squared away. But right before I go to get on the plane, to start the process home, I'm in this camp where you got the Marines coming in and the Marines going, home or wherever else they're being stationed at. And it's just like the movies. As I'm in this path going this way, I see a Marine coming towards me that I recognize. And it was the gunnery sergeant, staff sergeant at the time, gunnery sergeant now, that recruited me. It was my recruiter. So I get to see my recruiter, and we shared a moment, and it was cool. I mean, I knew where I was going, so it wasn't like he did me dirty. And then from there, I started the process home, same way, into Germany. Did a layover, I think in New York, not Maine. Then came into California, to LAX. Now, here's where it was. This is where I started to realize, even though I was young, I started to realize there were things that happened to us out there. When you're out there, especially, when you're popped out of the hatch of an LAV and you're going through this urban environment, everything's a threat. Every window, every door, every alley, everything, thing that looks like a rice bag on the side of the road can be an improvised device. Like, you're constantly analyzing 1,000 things every minute because your life depends on it, and the life of your Marines depends on it. And no one teaches you how to shut that down. So now you go into LAX, and I get off this plane, and my bubble's like 10 meters wide, and now there's people that are like bumping shoulders. I had so much anxiety just walking through LAX because I'm still doing it. I'm looking at luggages, I'm looking at doors, and I'm having to retell myself, like, you're home, chill out, just relax. And so then from LAX, they put me on a private jet, flew me into Palm Springs Airport. And that's where my family was waiting for me. Went home, and thank goodness I got home when I did, because baby came home, or was delivered a day early. So very next morning, we're in the hospital, and I'm delivering my third little girl.
That's phenomenal. And now, interesting thing though, you talk about not shutting it off, or it's always on. Does it ever shut off?
You learn to control it to where it becomes absent, so you feel like it's shut off. But then years later, you experience things. I remember one time I'm driving on the side of the freeway, I think I was coming home from work. And, I'm out here, Southern California. We're not too far from Box Canyon, Yuma. There's like a lot of places where the military does training. And by this point, I've been out of the military for years. And on the back of a semi-hauler is an old BMP vehicle that obviously it's on its way so the airplanes can, do their practice bombing. But as soon as I see it, instantly, that was one of the vehicles we're trained to be on alert for. That was an enemy vehicle. And I'm driving my little 2001 Honda Accord at the time. And I remember just everything inside me just felt frozen, because that was considered a threat. And then obviously within seconds, I get my composure, kind of laughed it off. But I realized, man, there's some things back there that are, they're still there.
Hardwired. Hardwired. And what do they do in terms of verifying your mental well-being when you're back home and expected just to reintegrate into society? What level of not scrutiny but verification, medical examinations do they do to make sure that you're integrating smoothly?
I don't know how they do it now. Back then, I was asked if I was okay, and I said I'm fine. And that was the level of effort that was put into that.
Okay. So you get back home, you get the biggest distraction, the most beautiful distraction of all time, which is a third kid. What do you do? What do you do as of that point up until, I guess we're gonna, span a 17-year period? What do you do after that when you get back home?
I tell my family not to tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to know I was home. And that actually took 30 days. It was 30 days before I was willing to let everybody outside of like, my parents and her parents. It took 30 days for I was like, okay, let's start telling the cousins and everybody, that I'm home, which, people were like, well, they wanted to come see the baby because they knew that the baby was here. And so, but for 30 days, I just wanted to be by myself. I didn't really go anywhere. I'd go from our house to the store to, get like Infamil or something like that, or, to a fast food place down. And I just kind of was a hermit crab for a month. And then it was like slowly started to integrate back with friends and family.
That's very interesting. And then what do you do for work, or what do you start doing for work?
So after that, I go and I start working for the Department of Public Social Services. So I'm going back to college. I'm working for the Department of Public Social Services, and I enter the police academy.
This is amazing. Like it's for anybody who people need to be interested in the backstory, and they need to understand who you are in terms of understanding and appreciating the absolute insanity of what you're subsequently put through, given what you've already sacrificed for your country. So you basically work in law. You get trained to work in law enforcement, which you do for how long?
I get hired through the academy in 2005. I get out on my own in 2006, and I keep doing my career until January 19th of 2019.
Is it an independent or same employer for 13 years?
Same agency that I worked for the entire
Same
time.
agency. So you're a reliable employee. You are a what's the what do they call oh my goodness, not a loyal citizen. What's the word? I'm totally brain farting, but you're a patriotic citizen who sacrificed more, put your life on the line. I think I know the answer because I heard it in another podcast. You've never had a criminal record in your life, correct?
My Bonnie and Clyde moment was a ticket. It was a tinted windows ticket in 2003.
In what state? I thought I'm in Florida. Tinted windows, I think, are legal here. I don't know. Maybe were they all blacked out?
It was no. It's Southern California. It's hot. So I don't think I ever gave anyone a ticket for that during my career because I was like, this is ridiculous. But no, it was here in California. As a matter of fact, I was in uniform because I actually got that when I was coming back from because when you get back from a deployment, even though you get to go home, you still got to keep going back to the base. So on this base, it was Camp Pendleton. But on the weekends, I would still come home. And so I actually got that ticket while I'm in my Marine Corps camis coming back from Camp Pendleton from a CHP officer. CHP Officer Rice, if you're working and you're watching, that wasn't cool, man.
CHP, California Highway Patrol.
Yeah.
How much was the ticket?
Oh, man, I don't remember.
And they don't immediately smash out your windows because you're not allowed. I mean, what do they do?
No. It's if you take it off, I think it was like $10 or $30. And if you leave it on, I think it was like $100 and some back then.
Okay. All right. So that's it. You got a clean record. You'd never been reprimanded as a U.S. Marine Corps?
Nope.
Okay, it's crazy. So up until 2019, working law, is it law enforcement, like uniform on walking the streets?
Yeah, started off like, patrol, pushing a black and white, and then worked my way into detectives, got into gangs and worked undercover in gangs.
Okay, because I know that you have had some wild experiences, or at least very intense experiences as law enforcement, working undercover in gangs. Is it MS-13 gangs? Because that's the only one, or the Bloods of the Crips are the other two that I know.
Out here it's predominantly Hispanic gangs. Actually, MS-13 was coming into, our exposure to MS-13 was coming in at the tail end of my career. It was actually some of my informants, because when I was on the regional gang task force, we knew people from like the Mecca, Oasis area out there by the Salton Sea, for whoever's trying to track what I'm talking about. And actually, it was some of the street rats that were telling us, hey, there's these MS-13 guys coming in. And then I started looking into them, but I never had the chance to fully investigate them.
Something tells me there will be a movie made about your life sometime sooner than later. But tell us, for those who can't possibly, undercover in gangs, What in? I mean, I'm thinking Training Day. I'm thinking all the movies I've ever seen. What is being? I'm thinking Serpico. What does being undercover? What do you have to do to get undercover? Get infiltrate gangs?
So shockingly, I was involved in four officer involved shootings. And for the cops that are like, oh, the guy was trigger happy. No, like where they had guns and were actually shooting at me. And that all actually happened in my patrol time. Didn't have any shootings when I was actually working. Gangs are doing undercover. Um, you pretty much you grow the real big beard. We did Hispanic gangs and outlaw motorcycle gangs, and you go and you're getting weapons from guys. You're getting guys. It's not as glamorous as the movies make it seem. It's actually a lot more scary, because there's situations that because you don't want to burn this, you don't want to burn the informant, you don't want to burn yourself. So a lot of times your officer safety has to get compromised for that, and that goes against everything you've been trained for. So it makes you very uncomfortable. There was times where, my partner's driving. We got the informant in the passenger seat. I'm in the back seat, and we only had time to do a real quick, search of them, but not a confident search in them. And it's one of those things where if this guy has a gun, he could take out my partner. Or a lot of times you're going into these areas where there's a gap. Like there's not a lot of, I mean, it's Southern California, a lot of desert area. So you're driving out to some of these trailer parks where your guys that have your six, they can't be that close.
Well, sorry,
Because
what does have your six mean?
so anytime we do something, we stay close to the guys that are undercover or in plain clothes. So if something goes wrong, they give the signal. We can immediately get there and protect these guys because you don't have a vest or anything on. Like you don't have all the equipment that you would normally have if you're uniformed. Well, when you can't be that close to them, the farther away, the farther that response times, the more time you have to do on your own. And so when you're going out to some of these trailer parks that are in Mecca and Oasis, your backup may have to be 3 or 4 minutes away. And I know that may not seem like a lot, but that's a very long time if you have to fend for yourself. And then you start to wonder, what if this informant's setting us up? Because a lot of times their self-preservation requires that. And we were very lucky. We never got burned by an informant, but there were some times there where things felt sticky. I remember there was one community, and this one was actually a Crips community. We do have a Crips gang out in Palm Springs, and we had to get information. When you do search warrants the right way, you have to land these targets, get official documentation, stuff that you can attest to yourself, because you're going to be swearing before a judge. And so when we have to make sure we see whatever our subject is going into whatever building, we see it. And a lot of times you have to be in scenarios that are not safe. And you got to, like in this particular situation, I had to go by myself. So I'm in a Crips apartment complex. I'm by myself. I have a phone, with the wired headphone, acting like I'm talking to a girl that I'm looking for in the complex, but it's my partner's on the other line, waiting to hear if I scream. And then you sit there, I'm on the rails waiting for the target, and those guys know who belongs there and who doesn't. And so you just have to wait, and play it off. And it worked. We got the information we needed, and we left. But I remember that was one time, man, that my shirt was drenched with sweat when I was done with that one. I'll put it that way.
Blood In, Blood Out was the movie that I was thinking about that I couldn't come up with fast enough. Now we're going to get into this as relates to your story when when you were put in jail. But you have kids while you're doing this. I
Yes.
presume anonymity, or at least concealing your identity, is of critical importance at the time. Do you not live with some sort of a fear now, nonetheless, for all of what I presume legally you might have done while you were undercover busting gangs?
it- for the last 2 years, 3 years, it was pretty high. Only because as we get into the story, they doxed where I lived, so then it became a real threat because I still have active cases, homicide and attempt homicide cases that are in the court system. So these gang members find out, well, here's the main agent, or the main officer, we can go kill him. We can take him out. So you can't live like that because you give yourself a heart attack. But in the beginning of when this happened, I wouldn't let my son throw out the trash. I wouldn't let anybody check the mail. I was always the first one out of the house for anything, just in case somebody was lying in wait. So now there's a risk there, yes. I just don't let it consume my life right now.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into the thick of this. Although I think I could spend another 2 hours on your stories as a undercover freaking cop busting gangs. 2019, what happens? Why does the employment come to an end?
So right before, so in December of 2018, we have a change of leadership in our chief. We go from a phenomenal chief to our deputy chief takes over. And we're actually kind of excited about this because on paper, this man was one of us, tactical team. He did narcotics, he did gangs. He was actually the captain, lieutenant or the captain of the SWAT team when San Bernardino had the terrorist attack. So, like, we were pumped up about this guy, and he was kind of quiet while he was our deputy chief. But during this time in this transition, we started to see his true colors, and we ended up having a homicide investigation. One of the detectives, Detective Heather Olson, I got no problem putting these people's names out there. These are just my opinions, or not my opinions, but these are my facts. And she comes to me to write a warrant because 90% of the warrants were going to come through me because I was the one that did gangs, and the majority of the homicides we had were going to be gang related in some aspect. So I go through this probable and the case, and I tell her there's no probable cause. So she gets mad. She goes to the sergeant, who happens to be a friend of mine, good guy, Sergeant Alberto Reese, and he calls me to the office, and he's like, Luna, that's my last name. And so I go in there, and he's like, man, Heather says you don't want to do the warrant for her. I'm like, come on, sir, overtime? You don't think I want overtime? The probable cause is not there. So I run through the series of facts. He's like, yeah, we don't got it. He calls her in, tells her, is he missing anything? No. Well, then you don't got no probable cause. So she goes to, deputy chief at the time, Travis Walker. And you guys look him up. You'll be interested in how things turned out for him. So Travis Walker, all of a sudden, we're having an emergency detective briefing. Now, here's the thing. In a homicide case, we have a briefing in the morning and we have a briefing at night. Unless there's some major change or information that comes forward, there's no briefings in between that. And that hadn't happened. So I already knew what's going on. So we go into this briefing. All the detectives are there. He kind of BS's for about a minute and a half. And then he's like, all right, well, I want warrants on that guy, and that guy. They're pinned up on the board. And so I look at Heather. She don't say nothing. I look over at my buddy, the sergeant. Good guy, but he is a yes, sir guy. And he don't say nothing. So I look at, we used to call him DC for deputy chief. So I go, DC, well, I'm the one that got to write the warrants here. So what's the probable cause? And he gets pissed. He stands up. He's bigger than me. He's got me by like 6 inches. He was like 6'6". And he slams his fist on the conference table. And he goes, they're effing gangsters, Luna. They're effing gangsters. That's your probable cause. Now, he obviously said the words. He storms out, slams the door. So now I'm pissed. So I'm looking at everybody. I'm like, yeah, let me go write in the probable cause that we want to go do this because they're effing gangsters, and see if we don't all end up in civil court or arrested for Fourth Amendment violations. So I can't be insubordinate. I've been ordered to write the warrants. So I tell the sergeant, hey, I'm going to write the warrants. I'll write them how she said. Now, there's a lot to this story, but it would take a whole 2 hours just to do this story. But one of the important things to this story was some of the information. I'm careful how I say this. Some of the information we're getting was coming from a person that was related to one of the officers that we had at that time. So there were a lot of things. This is one of those cases. All cases need to be pristine, but this one definitely has to be pristine because ultimately this informant can be killed and they're related to one of ours. So I tell them, hey, start getting, you need to look witness protection, witness relocation, like all these things need to start coming into play. So I write the warrant. And then I tell the sergeant, hey, I'm taking him with me as one of my buddies. So when we go to the DA's office right now, you guys don't say that I didn't try to sell this, right? So me and my brother, Detective Brothers, we head over to the DA's office, had a great working relationship with Deputy DA Annie Lofthouse, just a phenomenal gang DA. We go drop off the warrant. Now, one of my bragging rights was to this point, I had never had a warrant denied because I was never in the gray area. Either I had it or I didn't. So I tell, hey, Annie, we've been up for about a day and a half. We're going to be down in the car sleeping. When you get to this, give us a holler. So she's like, okay. So finally, the phone call comes in. She's like, hey, I got a big problem up here. I go, I know. So we go up there. So we go to the floor they're on. And here's where things get a little sticky. She has 2 warrants for this case. One that I wrote and one that the gang intervention team wrote. Their warrant was for the electronics once we did the warrant, for the homes. She was going to approve theirs. Ours didn't have probable cause. So I said, listen, Annie, I have so-and-so that's on the phone. They can answer the questions because I knew you're going to have questions and you can get this information for yourself. So she goes through, verifies that my warrant is accurate. And so what they ever did with the other one or how they dealt with it, that's beyond me. I don't know. I just know they weren't happy about it. But this is the real reason my career came to an end. So I tell Annie, do me a favor, just call the sergeant, let him hear it from you, and then I'll deal with it when we get to the station. So she does. We're driving back, and the sergeant calls me. He's in a panic. He's like, she denied the warrant. I go, what do you think was going to happen? We don't have probable cause. Well, Travis Walker had all 3 homes already surrounded by SWAT teams. And because there's more targets than we had SWAT teams, he had to call in assistance. So you have multiple agencies involved. And this now future chief is about to get humiliated by everybody because as cops, we're very hard on each other, a bunch of alphas, right? So that happens. So between the fact that happens, it was just, childish things, to be honest, that were taking place. I had a target on my back. There was only 2 times in my career that I was written up. Once when I was in training for transfer TOK, transfer of knowledge thing. It's procedural. And then once for crashing a police car, which I'm surprised it took so long before I crashed one. Other than that, I never even had so much as a citizen complaint. Like I was very lucky to have the career that I had. And he ends up taking the reins, and within 4 months of him being chief, he writes me up 4 times, does the official termination for inaccurate. Well, I'm sorry, that was one of the write-ups was inaccurate documentation on my time card. And then the reason I got terminated was for not taking the case as a mandated reporter and for a homicide case that was just completely it was a terrible case. Nonetheless, I go to court. It's called arbitration. There we go. I go through arbitration. Judge hears all the facts. Luckily, I had partners that weren't intimidated by this chief. And when they took the stand, they really told the truth. And everything was documented by body cam. So I wasn't worried, really, honestly. And we win the case. Judge writes a 36-page award letter saying that, these are the judge's words. You're using them as a scapegoat. You need to reinstitute them with back pay, make them whole. It was a great award letter. This is where we messed up as a police union. We didn't have binding arbitration. So even though we won the arbitration case, they get to appeal it to the writs of state of California. So now this leads into the FBI story off of one of the theories I have. We're scheduled to go to writs in May of 2021. By this time, the departments even came out and offered me a large amount of money. And I'm like, no, you're going to pay me a hell of a lot more than that. And I'm getting my job back. So they already knew I wasn't going to budge. And then that takes us into what happens on.
Well, now we're going to get there, but just one quick question. If I'm looking here, is Travis Walker the one from Santa Paula and its former police chief, Travis Walker, sued by second accuser? Is this the Travis Walker?
That's the gentleman. I told the city manager, I told him, listen, you don't even have to take my word for it. This stuff's on body cameras. You have other detectives telling you this guy is lying. Like I even told you guys realize he wanted me to fabricate a search warrant, and you're gonna take this guy's word over mine, and they learned the hard way.
Well, dude, okay, so now that's interesting. It's making a lot more sense in terms of how one becomes a target. 2019, this happens in 2019. It spans a little bit of time. Arbitration doesn't happen overnight. The world shuts down in March. Now, I haven't surfed through your Twitter feed. You sent me some of the materials that were the object of the complaint, but you have when did you have a Twitter account? Were you, I don't know. This is not blaming, and there's no but. In hindsight, you can read some of the tweets and say, if anybody wants to misunderstand a tweet, maybe I gave them some fodder. But explain what happens, how you get, basically, what happens during COVID and what you end up doing on Twitter.
Yeah, actually, I think I opened up my Twitter in 2011 or 2012. I think is when I created it, but I didn't really like it, so I was on Instagram, and I was putting out information, about a certain thing that they're trying to put in our bodies. I was putting out information about my thoughts.
You could say it. The jab, the jab. I've stopped calling it. I've stopped even suggesting it's a vaccine, but the jab. So you're one of them free thinkers who might have had too much to think, and you're posting some stuff, and you're active about it. From the beginning.
From the very beginning, I'm talking about the jab. I'm talking about the election fraud. I'm putting all that out there. So Instagram ends up taking me down. And so I was like, man, now what do I do? So I'm like, all right, I have this Twitter thing, people are there, in that world. So let's check this out. And so I go to Twitter and I was a small Twitter. I think I had like 600, like a little over 600 people that were following me at the time. And I'm putting it out there. I'm not even getting Twitter. Like, I don't even violate Twitter's terms of service. And were some of the tweets spicy? Some of them were spicy. But I'm also an absolutist when it comes to the Constitution and the First Amendment. And so the FBI, according to them, in their, we haven't seen the whole search warrant yet because they won't give it to us. But in the 7-8 pages that they have given us, 3 different times, they say confidential citizen, confidential informant, and confidential human source. 3 times they're writing their document. So they say that somebody reported my Twitter account to them. This is what they tell me later. And my theory is that it's somebody at my agency or by proxy, someone to my old agency in the administrative department that was like, we're about to get served up with a multi-million-dollar wrongful termination and bring this guy back. But if we can get him arrested, then we don't have to bring him back.
It'll certainly color our file a little bit more. I mean, it's after the fact stuff, which should in theory have no relevance on the merits of the case. However, when it comes to reinstatement, I suppose, being arrested being arrested and imprisoned might impede your ability to come back to work. So, I mean, and we'll summarize this quickly. You're critical of the jab. You're critical of the 2020 election. I can only presume you are one of the many people who says, holy crap, Jan 6 is coming there. And we believe that this has been a fortified to the point of invalidity, constitutional invalidity. This revolves around the January 6th insurrection. I'm putting it in quotes for anybody who's listening on podcast. You didn't go down, but you got taken down by the FBI as a result of tweets relating to January 6th.
Absolutely. So I was invited to the Capitol.
By who?
And the FBI, one of my coworkers. So during the fight for my job at the police department, I had a part-time job working as an explosive canine handler, which plays into this.
You were blowing up dogs?
No.
First of all, I'm joking, Alpha.
For all the paw lovers, no. My partner had paws, and we looked for bombs at, we did Levi Stadium, Grammys, Emmys, like all the major stuff down here in California. But so I was a part-time canine handler to detect explosives. And then I worked part-time originally, and then I got hired full-time to work for the Palm Springs Unified School District as one of their gang officers and one of their security officers, given my background. So that's what I was doing when all this, unfolded on January 15th. So it was my partner from the school district that, same kind of ideology that I had, a super cool black dude that was just like, hey, man. And so fine, this is how it goes down. He's like, hey, me and my wife are going to go to D.C. for January 6th. We want you to go. Well, at the time, my daughter's only about a month and a half old. And
is this your 4th kid?
Oh, no. I got babies. So from the first military marriage, we can call it, I had 4 daughters. All of them are adults now. And then I had a relationship during my law enforcement career where I had a son that lasted for a few years.
Okay, we're up to 4 now. Keep going.
And then I met the woman of my dreams that's going to be with me forever. And we have 2 little girls, one that was born on November 20th of 2020, and then one that was born this past year.
First of all, that's amazing. You have 6 kids. It'll keep you young, having young kids at 44. And your genes are going to inhabit the earth, which is also something of a victory. So you seem like a very good dude. If there's anyone who's going to propagate their genes, Alpha, you seem like you seem like the alpha candidate to do it. Okay, fine. So you get invited.
Yeah.
And you decide not to go.
And I said, I tell him, no, I can't go. And a lot of these conversations are documented in text messages. And so then, and he knew financially, like I was already fighting, the court cases for the agency stuff. And so finally I tell him, hey, look, man, I'm strapped, so I can't go. The money's just not there. So he reaches out to me and he's just like, hey, we will cover everything. Like, you just pay for your food. We'll cover all the other expenses. And then I was just like, man, I still can't, I've got an infant at home. So I'm invited to go. I don't go. January 15th, we're awakened by an explosion.
Well, actually, before we get there, just back it up because I don't want to pull these up. I just want to find the one. You're tweeting actively in the interim, and I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever gone through your Twitter feed to see if anybody says, "Hey, at FBI, you might want to look into this." That's what some people tend to do. As far as I can tell, you'll tell me if I'm wrong. The most objectionable tweet that you've ever done, I think, January 6, 2021. Will you fight, bleed, and maybe even die with me as we take on the evil that is now stealing our nation? I'm a Marine combat veteran, law enforcement veteran of 14 years, and my allegiance is to God with a capital G, family with a capital F, and country with a capital C. I'm ready. Are you? Time to patriot the fuck up. God wins. Patriot with a capital P. Is that the worst one you've done, or the most?
That was the one that I think is the most spicy, and that's the one that they focused on. That the majority of their interview was focused around that question.
And it's literally like you sent me there's a lot of stuff, and I'm looking through it, and like some of it you say you sent me stuff that they should have looked at, but I just would want to look at the incriminating stuff. That's the worst that I've seen. That's the one they focused on when they interrogate you. So that just so everybody knows, full disclosure, that's the spiciness of your tweet. I don't know that whether or not, it's like the Ashley Babbitt, you're asking for trouble maybe, but definitely not the amount of trouble that you got. Okay, so you're tweeting these things out beforehand. You say no to January 6th. January 6th comes and goes. Before they pre-dawn raid you with concussive grenades and snipers or whatever has the lasers on them, what happens as of January 6th to the raid, tweet-wise, social media-wise, and in your life?
My life is normal. I'm still going to work. I'm working at the school district. I'm still on Twitter tweeting, putting the stuff that I'm putting out. And a lot of us at the time kind of anticipated that the day before on January 19th, that Trump was going to put this disclosure of all this election fraud that was out. Obviously, we know that didn't come to fruition. And that was because I put another tweet out there that I think it was like 1-19 or 1/19. That was the other tweet that they had asked me about. And then the other tweet that they brought up was one of the Punisher skull, but has the Roman numeral 3 in it. And so they were questioning about the 3% militia group. They brought that up during the interview.
That's during your interview. Okay, but so those are the ones you put out before. Hold on, you know what? I actually have to bring those up. I think people need to see the absolute level of absurdity here. Stop screen share, present, screen share, window. Well, let's go with the spicy one first. Okay, so this is spicy one. No, this is not the spicy one.
Yeah, no, this is a spicy one.
Okay, so it says 19th at 4:50. What does that mean?
I see the Patriot up one.
Oh, okay, fine. Sorry, I have the wrong one. I have the wrong one up in my backdrop. Okay, so that's spicy number one. Now the only problem is I don't know how to get rid of that. So this is one of the spicy tweets.
Yes.
I'm gonna remove this and see if I can do this in real time. So I'm gonna go close that window, and I think I can bring up another one. The skull, the Punisher skull is the one that's kind of hilarious. Let's see here. We go to window, and I think this one. What do we got here? Do we see 19? This is 19th. Yes. What's this one about?
So that's when we thought Trump was going to come out. Well, I won't say we, but that's when I thought that Trump was going to come out and drop all the information about the election fraud that had been discovered.
So that's not incriminating per se. That's just showing a frame of mind that you were buying into this and that you were. Okay, and then we got, I can't find the Punisher. I'll bring the Punisher up afterwards. Okay, so you're tweeting in the meantime. You have no idea what's going on. January 6th comes and goes, and then you wake up with a wonderful knock on the door, and it's not Mr. Rogers on January 15th.
I wish it would have been a knock on the door. A knock on the door would have been a lot safer than what transpired. We're sleeping, and there's an explosion or a loud boom that's outside. I hear my truck alarm go off, and then I hear the house alarm go off. Now, everybody got to remember, I used to work undercover doing the gang stuff, as we talked about. And the first thing that comes to mind, because there's only like 3 or 4 times since we've lived at this house that we rented, where, if something's happened, a sound or something outside or alarm goes off, and I'll grab my old duty weapon that I had on the nightstand, to confront whatever threats out there. By the grace of God and only the grace of God, on this particular morning, I didn't grab my gun. I grabbed my phone. And so as I ran to the alarm panel, I'm turning off the alarm. Well, the front door, it's an Adobe style house, so the front door is like textured glass. So as I'm turning it off, the missus starts screaming at me, "Get away from the door, get away from the door." And I look, and there's like a dozen red dots that are, scanning the glass on the door. Then my phone goes off and it's the FBI dispatcher saying, "Hey, this is the FBI. We have your house surrounded. You need to come out." Kids are crying. Go ahead.
What were the explosions? I mean, you'll find out afterwards, but what were the
Yeah,
explosions that needed to precede the phone call?
flashbangs.
For what purpose? To wake you up?
Well, so uh, this is my opinion. So not only was I on a tactical team, I used to plan tactical operations. I've planned operations with 300 and 400 cops, multiple jurisdictions, federal agencies, military agencies. Like I used to plan these things. And there's a matrix that we go through, especially if we're gonna incorporate a SWAT team, or do dynamic entries. There's a lot that goes into it, not just to protect the officers, but liability. To protect the suspects, whoever you're going after. Every time I've ever been part of a dynamic search warrant, flashbangs was one of the last things that's ever used. In today's day and age, most of what happens is called surrounding callouts. We surround the home, we get lights on, we secure the area, and then we get on the megaphones. This is the police, this is the FBI, come out with your hands up. We attempt contact that way. Once we can't, by this time we've already have the numbers because we've been watching and doing this house probably for at least a few weeks. Now we attempt contact via phone. If that doesn't work, we get to the megaphones again. We may even, depending on the threat of the situation, maybe even put a robot to go to the door. Flashbangs is the last thing you do, because when you do that, it's the shock and awe, because now you're going to make entry. Here comes the dynamic entry, and you're trying to get the suspect off guard so that you can take them down, so you have the advantage. It is my opinion based off of my experience, and I've talked to a lot of.
They wanted you to come to the door with a fucking gun so they could shoot you.
That is exactly what I believe they wanted to happen.
Holy shit. And it's like I've never done law enforcement, never been in the military. All that I know is that when you wake up and you don't know if that's a gunshot that just went off, your first reaction is to go to is to grab a gun and defend. And especially since they do the flashbangs, concussive grenades, and then don't immediately enter, what did they think any rational person would do? Who was the guy that they just the Facebook post, old guy, blind, partially handicapped, that they executed because they get someone to respond to what they think is a confrontation? Well, I don't remember his name now, but no, dude, that's there's no other rational explanation. Flashbangs, and then they call you.
And then they call. There's a video of it, so nobody has to take my word for it.
I was literally just going to ask you if this is documented for those who don't believe. Is the video disclosed, communicated, public?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think it's in that file I sent you. There's one that says surveillance video or video surveillance.
Hold on just 1 second, sir. All right, now they got Alpha. I'm looking at the folder. The folder's FBI post, press negative media, same district, surveillance video. Hold on 1 second. Let's. Is it FBI SWAT attacks Alfredo Luna's home?
Yep.
Holy MFer. I'm trying not to swear. It was a New Year's resolution that I made yesterday, but I'm going to not abide by it whatsoever. Here we go. This is it right here. Okay, this is it. Is there audio on this?
No, there's no audio. So that's
people on a truck. There's 1, 2, 3. Dude, this is fucking insane.
Remember, 0 criminal record. As a matter of fact, just to give people an idea of my background, decorated Marine at Combat Meritorious Promotion. As a police officer, I have congressional awards. I was awarded the Medal of Valor. I have an award from the FBI signed by James Comey. Not proud of who signed it, but I earned my award. Multiple commendations from the chief. I had a law enforcement career that we all want as an officer. I was very, very, very lucky.
If you don't mind, I was going to call you Luna, but Alpha. I'm going to let this video play while we continue talking. And I didn't want to ask you these questions because it's almost demeaning. Like, did you win any awards that might make this even more egregious? Holy shit. Okay, so sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so the truck that's in the middle, you guys can keep your focus on there. The one to the far right is the armored vehicle. At the edge of the screen, that's the guys that's on the turret mounted with a rifle. But you're going to see the guy in that middle truck in a little while. That's going to throw.
Do you see my cursor? You see the cursor?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see a guy that throws a flashbang from there.
You live in a neighborhood, like you have neighbors across the street now.
Yeah. This is my neighbor's surveillance camera.
Oh, I see. Did you get that from your neighbor? Or did you get this from
Yeah.
the FBI?
No, no, no. My neighbor gave this to me.
Oh my
I'll
goodness.
tell you what, good man, because a lot of people would have been afraid to come forward
Well,
and help
scared,
out like
scared
this.
shitless. No, no
Yeah.
crap. I mean, this is okay. So, what time? This is pre-dawn, before six
Yeah,
o'clock.
this is 05 something in the morning.
I mean, I like to think that even these flashing lights probably would have woken me up because I'm a very, very light sleeper. But okay, so we're going to keep watching this. Should I
Yeah.
skip it? Should I skip it? Oh, no, we're 2 minutes in. Whatever.
I think the flashbang part's coming. After the flashbang, it's pretty much them just there's the flashbang.
Oh, that was it. Hold on 1 second. Did I
Yeah.
just miss it?
I think it was like at 157 or 158 when it went off.
Because we're looking at your house. Your house is behind the truck with the flashing lights.
Yeah, so top right corner, you guys will see the here goes.
Wait, did we miss it again?
Yeah, I think it was probably farther back.
The heck here. Come on, man. Let's do this. Okay, we're at 140. We did just see it. I mean, we just saw it. Am I going to back up to 130?
No. That bright light you saw was them turning the spotlight on the front door.
Okay.
The flashbang's very obvious. Like you'll see the explosion.
Okay, so
of light.
we're gonna let it play. And for those who are listening on podcast, I'll narrate the blinking lights of the truck while a corrupt and weaponized FBI prepares to try to provoke a fatal response from a man who they're raiding with no better reason. Okay, so they flash the lights. They're just walking around. This is like, did they just did this to the guy in the other Jan 6er guy in I forget what state now, New Jersey, where they issued a nationwide manhunt and went door to door. There you go. That was it.
Yep.
Okay, and we're at 211. Okay.
So now you can see my truck alarm in the driveway. The lights are flashing, alarms going off. The house alarms going off. That's actually they threw it in front of my son's bedroom window. Is where they deployed it at.
And now I heard you say this, but I'll ask it. It was on another podcast. We're going to get it out here for the sake of it. Does anything else happen in this video?
No. After this, The only thing that happens is you'll see me walk out, and then they'll handcuff me. But it's about a minute or so before that happens. There I am.
You mentioned that before anybody does any of these types of raids, they know the layout of the house. They know who's there, so they can avoid risks. So not the theory, but the reasonable expectation is not only did they know that you had two young kids in the house, they presumably even knew where their rooms were.
Absolutely.
So they throw. It's not a concussive grenade. It's a
Flashbang.
Flashbang. And so what's the difference between a concussive grenade and a flashbang?
One's going to be more sound oriented, and the flashbang it's not so much sound, but you're going to get the percussion and you're going to get the bright light to disorient you.
So they do that. You do not pick up your gun. You go down with your phone, and then they call you like, "Hey, we've surrounded your house and just detonated a flashbang. Didn't know if you hear it. Good morning."
That's exactly what happened.
Who is on the? Are you allowed mentioning who's on the phone with you or who calls you?
It just they identify themselves as the FBI dispatcher.
So they had they had your number. They had your number in all of this, like literally.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how long this raid? So tell us what happens during this raid, because it in and of itself is a traumatic experience.
So you see me come out, shorts and a t-shirt. They sit me on the sidewalk. They handcuff me, sit me on the sidewalk. I've already probably asked for the search warrant 3 or 4 times. When the agents get here, they'll give it to you. And then the worst part of that whole day is what I have to witness. I chose a military life. I chose a law enforcement life. And to come out with all those guns pointed at you, and it's not a training scenario, it's pretty intense. But as intense and scary as it was for me, my family's not. They're not military. They're not law enforcement. They're just regular people. And I had to see, my missus and my teenage stepdaughter, my teenage son. It was his birthday, as a matter of fact. This happened on his birthday. I had to see them come out with guns pointed at them and be ordered just the same way I was. They weren't handcuffed, but the same orders I was. And then they sat them across the street, actually in front of the house where the surveillance camera is. And in the dark early mornings of January here in California, and trust me, even though it's California, it's still really cold. And then I noticed that, my missus doesn't have the newborn. She was 2 months at the time, Alexandria. And she's pleading with them to go inside to get the baby, and they won't let her. So I tell the operators that are babysitting me, I'm like, hey, man, like, we have a newborn in there. Let her go get the newborn. And they wouldn't, so we're outside for about a good probably hour and a half, 2 hours before my family. The sun was up by the time they finally let my family go inside. And this is what I told them. You could tell from the it's a little house, little Adobe style house that we rent. And I ran these kind of searches. So I told them, I go, look, we don't have a lot of stuff, man. Go render the living room secure. Take my family inside. It's cold. And no, nothing. No search warrant. No nothing. They finally take my family inside and they take me to the backyard, and that's where they proceed to force the interview.
I'm going to get to that interview in a second. What blows my mind, who's with your 2-month-old for the two?
She's by herself and whoever was in my house at the time from the operators.
Is anyone? I'm not trying to be. Is anyone babysitting the kid, making sure the kid's not? She's not choking on a pacifier, or is like anybody watching? And then who the hell is anyone in the room with your 2-month-old?
We don't know. They've never told us.
Holy shit. Okay. I mean, but what's the rationale to this? Like, well, I mean, do you feel like you're dealing with automatons where you're like, dude, can my wife get our 2-month-old kid? And what do they do? Are they sitting there smiling? Do they look like they're happy doing this? Or do they look like they are following orders?
I struggle this part, man. I struggle this part because I've been on that kind of team. And so I tried to put myself in their shoes during what they're doing to me. So I know it's not going to be uncommon to see laughing and joking that can be completely disconnected from what they're doing. But I also know that their presence and their attitude towards me and my family initially, because things do change, initially was very aggressive. And it's something that it's what I would expect if we were being confrontational with them. But everything that I did, and I could hear my family, everything that all the requests we're making were all very professional. But there's this level of just aggression that they had. And I have a theory to that later. But it's
intended to provoke a violent response from you, even when you're in cuffs.
I knew, because you're a dad. Every part of you wants to get up and just jump up, handcuffs on, and be like, I'm going to go and check on my daughter. I don't care what you guys say. But I also know that the second I do that, any leg I have in the fight, I just gave it away. They're going to use it against me. That's going to turn into obstructing, resisting arrest. Now I'm giving them a crime to constitute the work they're doing. And I just had to bite my lip on this one, man, and it was hard.
It's unforgivable, and there's no. Okay, so when do they question you? Do they question you after you get your kid or your wife gets your kid, or is this in the 2 hours in between that they're questioning you?
So well, hindsight, I learned, but at the time, I don't know. I see them take my family, and best guess on the sun was probably around 7 a.m, maybe 7:30. They take me to the backyard. I'm still handcuffed. They sit me on one of my patio chairs. A couple SWAT guys that are surrounding me, and then the 2 FBI agents show up to do the interview. And as soon as they show up, first thing I said, hey, can I go inside and check on my family? And it's declined. They tell me, no, you got to sit down. And I have no idea. I'm sitting here. I got these 2 agents. There's 3 or 4 SWAT guys off to the side. Like I'm going to do anything. I mean, it was insulting, if anything. That's what I was upset about with them. And I have no idea. Is my family handcuffed? Is my family separated? It's my son's birthday. Has anybody checked on him? Like, there's all these questions. They're not answering it, and they won't even let me go in the house. It's just like
the 2 FBI agents. I mean, just for the sake of it, doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at all. I just want to visualize. Are they men, women, white, black? Like, what do they look like?
It's two Mexican FBI agents. Well, one is actually, he's a detective for the Rialto Police Department who's assigned to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. That's how they get jurisdiction, which is a great conversation to have one day. He's Mexican, clear as Mexican. The actual special agent Armenta, he's Mexican, maybe mixed with something. He's a real light-skinned Mexican guy, kind of like myself. He looks younger. I would say probably early 30s. And then Detective Candias, he looked older than me. I would say probably late 40s, early 50s.
And do they look like they're getting pleasure out of the power play here?
Armenta doesn't. Armenta, actually, my opinion of him at the time was he looked new. He looked like a rookie. Mm-hmm. Detective Candias, he just looked upset. Like like he didn't want to be there. He looked like I was the inconvenience for him. Is kind of, I mean, people could write it off to good cop, bad cop, maybe. But that's kind of the way they look. They were plain clothes, just with the FBI jackets. Everybody else were in the SWAT uniforms.
Okay, and then they start asking you questions, and you're a skeptic. I mean, you've showed critical thinking prior to. You believe the election was heavily fortified, and anybody who disagrees is out in left field. So you should know better than to talk to the enemy. Are you saying lawyer, 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 or how does this interrogation go?
The first words out of my mouth were, "Can I go and check on my family?" That got denied. I said, "Can I see the search warrant? We're going to get it to you." And then by this time, Armenta's opening up his black leather bifold, and I see printouts from my Twitter. And he sees that I see it, and he makes a statement. He goes, "We're here to question you about your social media being potentially violent."
Did you have to do everything you just did to question me on my social media?
Well, in my head, I'm thinking, you got to be effing kidding me. This is why you're here. This is why you pointed guns at my kids. This is why my baby was by herself. This is why my house is probably being turned upside down right now because of effing tweets. Like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm not verbalizing it, but I'm thinking it. And what actually comes out of my mouth is, nothing in my social media is violent, and I want my attorney.
And they say declined, or just, oh no, let's just ignore that and continue asking you questions.
Their response is, we'll let you get to your family, but we got to talk to you first. So it's, go with the program, or who knows where they're going to go. But they leverage my family against me. And
so you continue talking to them and answering questions.
I knew I had to be very careful, obviously given the career that I had, and my advice to anybody, listen, don't ever do it. Even if you're 100% innocent, don't ever talk to law enforcement, because things will be taken out of context and used against you. So always consult your attorney.
Michael Flynn is the prime example of not talking to them, even when you think they're being friendly, but especially when they are there as adversaries, overt.
Yeah. And so they come out, and the spicy tweets, the first printout they give me, and they're like, "What's this about?"
I mean, the answer: are you fucking kidding me, officer? Like, I mean, I don't know. I can't even. How long does this last? I don't know. Call it interrogation.
This interrogation, it was an interrogation. It goes on for, I would say, at least 2 to 3 hours.
Shut up. And from what I understand from other podcasts, you don't have the audio or the video of this.
They have the audio. So we were able to get an audio recording of the interview. So anything that I'm saying about what they asked me is documented. We have a copy of the audio. They have a copy of the audio. However, some of the things that unfolded later get a little bit more shady. But they go through. Now, during the interview, probably the two most important things that transpire, because not that it's related to my case, but anybody out there that has been told that this is not the political strong arm of the government that the FBI is being utilized for, they asked me two questions. And never in my career have I ever asked these two questions. And remember, this is recorded. So anybody wants proof, we'll send them the soundbite. They asked me, who'd you vote for president? I said, Donald Trump. And they asked me, what political party are you registered with? I said, I'm a Republican.
It's totally normal. It's almost like being arrested and being asked what religion you are. I mean,
I don't know if they were saying it to get me pissed, because they did. I was upset. I didn't show it, but internally, I was more mad than I already was. And then right before the interview concluded,
so if I may, were those questions early on in the interview or later on in the interview?
I would say those are a little bit more than halfway through.
Okay.
And so then when we get to, so when they were asking me about I'll go back to the Punisher skull, because they bring out that printout, and they're all, what's this? I go, that's the Chris Kyle Punisher skull. And so this is when Candice, the older gentleman, he goes, no, it's not. You know what it is? I said, yeah, it's the Chris Kyle skull, the American sniper. He goes, no, that's a militia. And so we have this little back and forth argument. He goes, you're going to tell me you don't know what the 3%ers are? And I said, no. I go, I work OMGs. I know what 1%ers are. So you want me to make an educated guess here? I will. So he proceeds to tell me that the 3% militia it took 3% of the Americans to be a part of the revolution that took over this country. And then my response to him is, well, I'll look it up, and I'll see if you're accurate in that take. I go, but this is the Chris Kyle skull. And so that concludes that part. Now, I think you more than a lot of people, unless there's other, attorneys or people in law enforcement, will know why this statement he makes, and this is towards the end of the interview, so important because this one actually made my stomach turn. I just shared with everything that happened with this forced interview, ignoring my request for my attorney. And then this is what Detective Candias tells me. He says,
His
well,
name is Detective Candy Ass?
that's what a lot of people have started to call
Okay.
him. and I'm
Sorry.
okay with it. He comes out and he makes a statement. He goes, you just know how to tweet without getting in trouble. Now, I'll translate this for the audience. This is a detective who the day before was just in front of a judge, raised his right hand, and swore in front of the judge that everything in that search warrant is true and accurate to the best of his knowledge. So in this case, they're investigating domestic terrorism based off my social media. So you're telling the judge that you're investigating this criminal element of these tweets because they're saying that I wanted to disrupt the January 20th inauguration. And I'll explain that part because it gets crazier. But now he makes the statement to me, recorded, that he already knows that I tweeted in a way that wasn't criminal. So how did you tell a judge that these were criminal terrorist threats, California Penal Code 422, if you already knew and had the mindset that I didn't meet that threshold? You lied. You lied to a judge.
No. The judge just believed something different than he believed. It was just his opinion, although he had to swear to it I presume, in an affidavit for the warrant.
100%. So then I start finding out they're telling me they're going to take my guns. So in California, red flag law state, they got a California gun violence protective order to take my firearms. And then the next day they filed for the criminal probable cause search warrant. Now, why this is important, in 14 years of law enforcement, I never knew this loophole. And we learned this when we went to court because we were trying to get the search warrant suppressed because of exculpatory information, Brady information. There's just a lot to it. But what the judge told us was, even though if the judge agreed that, these were lies and there was all these omissions and the probable cause wasn't met, the fact that they had the gun violence protective order first to precede it, he was always going to sign that probable cause search warrant for the criminal terrorist threats. So in other words, if you live in a red flag state, you can have law enforcement generate this, anonymous party or this informant to say you're a threat, get that, come to your home, and now search for the crime.
Wow.
That is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying to me.
It's an amazing thing. Like I've said this about Canada, where the gun ownership laws are so restrictive and so prohibitively, seriously in terms of infractions or violations, that it's a liability to own a firearm, own a shotgun, and don't leave it loaded, and and you get raided, jail for 2 years. Don't have a trigger lock on it, jail. And so it's still legal, but it's such a liability of your freedom to own that it'll just be a deterrent for anybody, which sounds something similar to Commie, California. Okay, so where were we now? You do the interview, they end the interview, you just know how to tweet without getting in trouble.
I asked them because I'm starting to realize these guys, or at least these two FBI agents, are not as smart as what I thought the FBI was. I'm starting to realize this through their line of questioning. So I asked them, how did you guys get, because I asked them, I go, why did you guys even do this for my social media? Well, because we believe that you're trying to disrupt the January 20th inauguration with these tweets. And so I asked them, how? With what tweet? What tweet? What private message? What phone call? Because by this time, they're even asking me questions, back in November of 2020 or October 2020, what were you doing up near San Francisco? And I was like, we were recertifying for our canines. So they already had gone through my banking information, my text message information, my geograph. They already knew all about me before they showed up to my house, and they're questioning me. And obviously I had legitimate reasons for everywhere I was. So when we get to this point, I said, as a matter of fact, just a few days ago, I tweeted, and this is in those tweets that I said they never brought up. It's like a red banner with the Statue of Liberty. There was this tweet circulating social media, and it was telling people to go to the national capital or the state capital and to go armed. But nobody on this post was taking any claim to it, and it was spreading like wildfire. So a bunch of us quote tweeted this and said, "Do not go. This is an Antifa. That's the one." So you see what I put? This is a BLM and Antifa trap. Do not attend. Share this. So I immediately asked them, I just posted this a few days ago. How did you get a judge to sign off on a search warrant that I'm telling people to go and disrupt the inauguration when I just tweeted the opposite, telling people not to? Now, they should have just stuck with the lies they're already doing and said they didn't know what I was talking about. But they actually slipped up and said, well, we saw that. But you're telling people not to go because it's BLM and Antifa. And so I tell them, I don't care if I'm telling people not to go because it's too cold or too hot. I'm still telling people not to go. So how do you convince a judge? And the look on their face told me that this wasn't in the search warrant.
Yeah. How do you convince a judge? Let him remain ignorant, and everybody can plead plausible deniability. And well, at least the judge will say, I didn't see it. What I rely on, an FBI that falsifies evidence to get spy warrants against Carter Page. How am I supposed to know that Kleinfeld, his name is not Kleinfeld, Kleinsmith, falsified evidence? How am I supposed to know the FBI guys didn't show me exculpatory tweets that would have undermined any? All right, so this interview lasts a few hours, and then they take you to jail, right?
No. So here's what they do. They take my guns. Now they've moved me into the dining room of my house. So this is the first time I'm actually seeing my family as they're getting ready to leave. And now they bring me the face page from the search warrant finally, at the conclusion of all this. And so I ask them, I go, what do you guys want from me? Like, what is it that you want so my family doesn't have to worry about this happening again? And so Armenta says, he goes, well, you seem like a good guy. This is your chance to take the off ramp and just stop tweeting about the government. Now, it doesn't really sit in that statement of what he said till later on the day, when you start to process it all. And then I realized what he was actually telling me. He's like, shut up, just censor yourself and the problems go away. But they leave. They don't arrest me. They give me a property receipt. I ask them. Now, this is where it's a theory.
Hold on. Sorry. What does a property receipt mean?
A property receipt. So anytime we do a search warrant, anything we take from that house, anything, you have to document it. Okay. And then you give it to the person saying, hey, here's a list of everything that we took. So this way there's a receipt of it. So they give me a property receipt of all my firearms and firearms related things, magazines, all that stuff. And then they leave. So that's January 15th. On the evening of January 20th, Inauguration Day, is when they arrest me. So I'm working at the school district. I'm out patrol. It's in the evening time. And one of my partners, retired law enforcement, he calls me, and all my partners kind of know what has happened by this time because it's been all over the local media. And he's like, hey man, there's some unmarked cars surrounding the school district, and there's some marked units parked a little bit ways down. So I know from my experience, you don't do that when you're going to come question somebody. You do that when you're going to arrest somebody. So I call my supervisor, who happens to be a friend, and I say, hey Rudy, more likely they're going to arrest me. I don't want to get arrested in the school uniform and have that make the front page of the local news on top of everything. I'm going to go home. I'm going to change into civvies, make sure my family's dialed in on what they need to do, and then I'll go over there and walk into whatever they got going. I do that. Family's in tears, and make sure they have the number of the attorney. Make sure that they have my bank card and PIN number and all that stuff, because I don't know how long this is going to take, because this is all at the beginning of when all this was happening to people, so we didn't really know. So I make my way. I meet them across the school district where we put gas in our vehicles, right next to Palm Springs International Airport. Palm Springs PD is there, and the FBI agents are there. Well, I know the Palm Springs guys. It was a neighboring agency. I've worked with these guys for years. So the sergeant comes over and he's like, hey, Looney, you know what this is about? Yeah, it's my social media, man. They were just at my house a few days ago. He goes, no, it's a warrant for an assault rifle. I said, no. I go, it's for my social media. They were just at my house a few days ago. By this time, the agents come over, and I don't know if they probably thought he was giving me insider information or what, but they kind of, interrupt it. And they tell me, yeah, you're under arrest, California Penal Code 30605, possession of assault rifle. I'm pissed. And so my supervisor's still there. He sees that now it's going to surface my anger, and he's looking at me and he's just like, just shut up. Don't say anything. So then I go, what's my bail? Because I figured my bail would be somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000. And they go, it's $250,000. So I go, what are the other charges? And they go, there are no other charges. So then I knew they did what's called a bail enhancement form. Now for California, I've only done them maybe 3 or 4 times in my career. Like, this is reserved for like the most like intense scenarios. Like you arrest a domestic violence suspect, and if this person gets out, they're going to kill the victim. Like, they're going to finish it off. Like, that's what this is reserved for. And this is what they did to me. They did a bail enhancement form, and to this day, they haven't given it to us.
California Penal Code 30605 defines possession of an assault weapon. Anyone within the state possesses an assault weapon, I don't know what that means yet, except as provided in this chapter, will be punished by imprisonment for up to a year, yada, yada, yada. I know the punchline to this because I listened to another interview. The assault weapon that they charged you with and arrested you with was your service weapon?
It's my police patrol rifle.
No, Alpha, you gotta make it make sense. Service patrol rifle in what state?
California.
So what the hell does an assault rifle mean under that provision of law for someone who has no idea?
There's no such thing as an assault rifle.
I know.
You know? So the law is, it's already off to a bad start with that. But anybody that has, and this law changes so often, I know it just changed again for the beginning of 2024. It's any rifle that has it's center fire, pistol grip, 16-inch barrel, and a shoulder fire.
And 10 rounds, I think. Let's see here. Semi-automatic center rifles with fixed magazines, which can accept more than 10 rounds. Semi-automatic center rifles, which are less than 30 inches long. And semi-automatic center rifle. I don't know what a semi-automatic center rifle means. What is a center rifle?
So when you look at the cartridge,
sorry.
when you look at the cartridge, in the middle of that cartridge is where it has the primer, which is pretty much any bullet. And I'm probably getting this wrong. I won't claim to be a weapons expert when it comes to that. But it'll go down the rifling of the rifle. I believe, if I got that right. It's been a couple of years, you guys. I got rusty.
You'll get made fun of on the Rumble chat if you got it wrong. But bottom line kicker to all of this is the alleged illegal assault rifle that you have in your possession is your service rifle from when you were a police officer.
And they're saying there's no record of it. Now, remember, I used this for about 11 years, 10 or 11 years. The agency has paperwork on it. Every time we qualify, we don't just write down our qualifications. California is very strict for those that don't know. Every weapon we have to qualify, including our off-duty firearms. We're writing down the serial number. Sergeants and lieutenants are signing off on it. And in our agency, we do this a minimum of 3 times a year. So you're talking well over at least 30 different times this weapon being documented with me. On top of that, I'll go a little slow here. You'll see.
Let me see if I can make you bigger. Hold on. If I go like this, wrong one. Hold on. I'll bring you to this side. There. Look at this. Oh.
You'll see it. And this is dated October 4th of 2011. State of California, to the Department of Justice. You'll see my name right over here. You'll see, for anyone that wants to verify, there's the serial number, the weapon. You can corroborate that against.
Don't call it a weapon. You're going to get in trouble if you call it a weapon. A firearm.
A firearm. My signature, the chief's signature. Now, bless my mom's heart. My mom was one of those people that you keep every receipt for like 20 years. It doesn't matter what it is. 2 things that happen, and for those that are unfamiliar with the Jeremy Brown case, go listen to his case, and you'll think, I don't think their intentions were to arrest me for my rifle. I think they foobarred something, and this was the fallback plan. And I think that's why it happened a couple days later versus that day. When during the interrogation, I asked them, "Hey, you guys aren't taking my explosive orders, are you?" And they said, "Yeah, you're not supposed to have them." And because remember, I'm a canine handler, so there's certain orders and stuff that we have to do this. And I said, "Yes, I do. I have my ATF license. It's in my truck. I'm a Marine, so like everything, I know where everything's at. You take 10 cents from the truck, I'm going to know about it." And so I go to my glove compartment, and right under the black folder with my manual and insurance, all that is a plastic sheet. And inside that plastic sheet is my ATF certification, because anytime we go to work, it has to be with us as we're transporting this stuff. They come back, it's not there. Where else could it be? I'm like, no, trust me, it's there. They come back, it's not there. I go, well, you can check in the cases, because I had a container where I keep all this stuff stored together. And what's not there. based on everything that I've been through, because there's more to this case too. Hopefully, we can get to it. It's my belief they were going to do to me what they did to Jeremy Brown. They were going to say I was in possession of explosives that I wasn't supposed to have, and that's where I was going to get arrested. Now, you're not supposed to make copies of those certifications. However, like I said, the way I was raised is you make copies of everything. That's the way my mom raised me. So I had a copy, and I don't think they knew. So when they left, and I called my attorney to tell her what happened, I said, "Hey, they're saying I don't have this, and they couldn't find it. I even went and looked, and I couldn't find it. So somebody took it and probably got rid of it or destroyed it. But I had a copy of it, and so my attorney says, send it to two people. Don't say who you're sending it to, and send me a copy." And so the following day, she ends up sending that, or I think, or maybe that night or the following day, she sends that over to them. So they knew that they couldn't arrest me
You
on
couldn't
that.
lie about that. Yeah.
So I think they went over and went the rifle route, and probably with the same agency that I think is the one that's the confidential informant, probably got rid of any records that the agency had, not knowing that I had a copy from the original as
Well, I
well.
mean, it's so. Okay, so hold on. Had a thought about. Oh, the explosives would have been certainly easier to go after you as being a domestic terrorist if you're unlawfully in possession of explosive material. The rifle. I mean, wouldn't you have photographs, like ample evidence that you have been in possession of this in the line of service for years?
It's in the spicy tweet. There's a picture of me in uniform holding that rifle.
This is it's actually unbelievable. So they'll just find, show me the man, I'll find you the crime, le vrai barrière. They come and get you on the 20th, arrest you for unlawful possession of an assault rifle under California law, which was your service rifle from when you were law enforcement, and they take you off to jail or wherever, remand.
Yeah. I did leave out something, and it's important. During the raid, when we execute a search warrant, 99% of the time, nothing's an absolute in this case. We start from the front of the property and we work our way back. Narcotics being the exception, because sometimes you got to get there before it's destroyed. But the majority of the time, we're going to start from the beginning of the property line and work back. So the driveway, the garage, and then depending on the layout of the house. And which is what they did in my situation. So they destroyed my truck, destroyed my garage, my son's bedroom, and it was his birthday again, which it pisses me off. His bedroom's destroyed. Well, when they get to the hallway where my stepdaughter is, by this time, and we know this because she communicated it to me, she's in her bedroom. She's being babysitted by one of the SWAT operators, and she says they all congregate right there in the hallway. Well, in that hallway is all the accolades I was telling you about, the Medal of Valor, the commendations, the FBI award. It's all on this wall. They're all congregated there. And one of the guys asks, who she refers to as the bald guy, and if I'm correct, I think it was the team leader, asked the bald guy, "Hey, are we arresting this guy?" And he says, "No, I think this is one of the good guys." Now, like I said, everything to this point in my house has been destroyed. The rest of my house was treated with complete respect. My bedroom, where all my firearms are housed, they even folded clothes and put everything back. It's like two different teams hit it. What that tells me is when they had that 0 Dark 30 briefing with these FBI agents, they probably really had these guys thinking, because this is early on, in all this, they probably really had these guys thinking they're going to go deal with some bad cop, some dangerous, combat veteran. Like they really probably thought they were going after domestic terrorists. And when they started to see my family's behavior, my behavior, started to see, what's decorated on the walls, the lack of certain allegations that they were putting out there, like QAnon stuff. My coffee table has two books, the Bible and the Constitution. When all this started to unfold, I think they realized we weren't given the complete picture here, and it shifted. As far as the SWAT operators, it shifted the way they treated my family and my home.
Just not so much with the FBI.
Not with the FBI agents.
There's nothing that's going to convince me otherwise than they wanted to kill you with the immediate raid. Period. Like they had with that old guy in I forget where it was now, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. Ruby Ridge and Waco and whatever, and it's just history doesn't repeat, but it tends to rhyme. So they come and get you. They get you on the gun charge, and then they haul you off to wherever.
Yeah, they tell me I have a $250,000 bail, and then they ask me, "Do you want to go to the Indio jail or the Banning jail?" Well, I have homicide suspects at both jails, so I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's my life's going to be in danger at either one.
This is what everyone should understand this now, because now the whole beginning part's going to make a lot more sense now. You've literally locked people up or been responsible for locking people up in the jails to which they are asking you, which one do you want to go to? The one with gang members from The Crips are the one with the gang members from MS. I'm just using those as examples. They're taking you to jails or remand center, wherever it is, where there would likely, if not necessarily, be people that you've put behind bars.
If I'm the detective handling that case, the newest detective knows we either need to go and ship this guy to a county jail, couple counties away, or maybe even a different state. The threat to life is immediate, because we're talking gang members looking at life sentences. Like the threat is real. So as I'm being transported, it's about Palm Springs PD did the transport. We're driving, and the young kid, or young man, he's not a kid, the young man pulls off into this like dark commercial complex. So I'm looking, I'm in the back of the paddy wagon. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? He comes to the back and he opens the gate and he goes, hey man, go ahead and step out. I'm going to sit you in the front. Now, I know everything that's been going on. I look at him like, I go on stepping out, man. So you guys could say I tried to escape and someone's lying in wait to take me out. I go, I know, I'd seen enough movies to know this. And he goes, no, man. He goes, the sergeant, all the guys told me they know you and what's happening is bullshit. You shouldn't be going through this. So Sarge told me that once I get far enough away to move your handcuffs to the front and go ahead and bring you in the front of the car, that you're a good guy. And he, so with caution, I did, and he did. He double cuffed me, put it in front, moved me to the front of the vehicle, and treated with me with respect all the way to the jail. Now, when we get to the jail, this is where things start to really get crooked. As we're driving there, I'm thinking, well, this is the one point where California's jacked up laws are going to benefit me. I go, it doesn't matter if it's a $250,000 bail. It's a nonviolent felony charge, which means I'm going to get Fed kicked. What that means is our jails are so overcrowded that when somebody comes to jail in California, if there's not a violent charge to it, you just get a court date. They book you, they photograph you, take your fingerprints, you get a court date, and you go home.
Yeah, unless they know that you voted for Trump and you're registered Republican. Sorry.
And then this happens. So I get there and I tell the Sarge, hey, I'm getting Fed kicked, right? And he goes, we're trying to figure something out. So about 20 or 30 minutes pass, and I see the orange jumpsuit that says Riverside County inmate come out. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not getting Fed kicked. And so I got to get naked in front of former peers and go through all the shaming of this process. And then I'm thinking, well, they're probably going to put me in, protective custody, with the PC guys, given, my job. And, I've got a better chance of fighting those guys than I do, if they put me in GP. But we end up taking a different route, because I've been here to interview people before. So in my head, I'm like, where are we going? And they put me in solitary confinement. And at this point, I'm in this solitary confinement cell, and I'm broken, man. Like, I'm hurting. I'm hurting.
And you have what was it? I had two thoughts there. Hold on one second. It was solitary. It's either for COVID or for your own protection, for COVID. But when they put you in solitary, you have no idea for how long this is going to be.
Yeah. Well, I knew it wasn't COVID because the booking process was actually quite lengthy. They actually put you in another room and have someone come in and test you for COVID. And so and they tell you tested negative, and then from there you continue on with the process. Mm-hmm. So, it wasn't for COVID, I think it's because of who I was, a conservative Republican. Someone voted for Trump. So I'm in this solitary confinement. I measure it. It's 8 feet by 11 feet, with my feet, and I'm looking at it, and I just get on my knees and I just tell God, everything I've done for my country, war, law enforcement, 4 shootings, I left out something really important that, about the death of my partner. I go, I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it unless you find a way to bring me some peace. So just bring me peace. Now, while all this is going on, my family's already contacted my attorney. My attorney already has a bail bondsman agent. My mom put up her home for collateral, and they're calling the jail and they're saying, hey, don't book him. We have the bail for him. This is where things get twisted. The jail tells my attorney and the bail bondsman agent, you can't bail him out because he has a parole hold. And so my attorney, because she's known me for years, she's represented our agency. She goes, what are you talking about? He's never been arrested in his life. What a parole hold is, for those that don't know, that means you committed a felony, went to court, got convicted of the felony, got sentenced to prison, went to prison, served a portion of that time in prison, got released out early on parole. And then while you're out on parole, you did something to violate that parole, hence a parole hold being put on you. So, and all this is happening unbeknownst to me. So sometime during that night or the next morning, they contact my attorneys and family and say, oh, it was a clerical mistake. In the all the years of doing this job, I've never seen that happen
No,
ever.
like, just a mistake that deprived one of their life and liberty for however long because of a clerical mistake. Okay,
It
forgive
the
and forget.
the reason they did it was because they wanted to make sure the only way I was going to get out was you're going to do that $250,000 bail. That's the only way you're going to get out. And so now we go in. Now, the important thing that I really left out, and it plays into this next part of the story from August the 4th, is before they left, Detective Candias turns around and he goes, "Hey, I'm sorry about Gibson. He used to work with us. Sorry you couldn't save him." Now, my partner Gibson, he died on March 18th of 2011. We were in pursuit. It was a scenario that happened. My partner crashes into a tree. Me and another partner are trying to get him out, and we can't. We watch our partner burn alive in front of us. That an amazing man, Jermaine Gibson, 2-time Purple Heart recipient, also Marine, just a phenomenal human being. And he just got married, and his baby actually was, little Jermaine was only about 2 or 3 months old at the time. They literally said this to me before they leave. Everybody can kind of decide for themselves why. Well, the next time I see the FBI, now by this time, my attorney's been corresponding with the DAs, the FBI. They know I'm represented. I get a knock at the door on August the 4th of 2021. And when I open the door, it's Special Agent Armenta and FBI agent or Detective Candias. And I look at them. I'm holding my little one. I step out because they're not coming. You got a warrant? And they're like, "No, we're here to return your electronics equipment." And so my older daughter comes, takes the baby. So now I'm talking to them in front of my house, in front of the front door. And I tell them, I make this statement: "You guys realize the American people don't trust you anymore." And the FBI agent Armenta replies, he goes, "Why do you say that?" I said, "You had Christopher."
Because it's true, but okay, what's his answer?
So I go, "You had Christopher Wray go on television and make the statement that he hadn't seen any evidence of Antifa at BLM at January 6th. I go, at a minimum, everybody with a phone or a tablet has seen, John Sullivan and the ties there." And this is what Armenta tells me. He goes, "Well, of course he said that. He can't say something that's going to help Trump." Now, I'm standing in the front door facing Armenta. Candias is standing behind Armenta facing me. So they're both facing me. When he says that, even his partner kind of looks at him like, "Dude, what'd you say?" And so I look at him. I said, "Dude, I think Biden is a complete clown. But if I'm under oath and I get questioned on something he did good, like, I got to tell the truth." He realizes he said the quiet part out loud. "Well, we're going to get your electronics." So they go back to the vehicle. They're there for a little bit of time. And they come back. They give me my electronics. I sign the receipt for it. They leave. I immediately get on the phone with somebody to have them record my statement while it's completely fresh. Then I call my attorney, tell my attorney what happened. He's pissed. He's like, "Well, did they call you?" I go, "No." He goes, "They should have never." They've tried no communication with me.
They're directly communicating with someone whom they know to be represented. I don't know if the rules are the same in America that it would be in Canada civilly, but I presume when they know that someone's represented, they don't go and meet with them privately without the presence of counsel.
100% misconduct. And so he's pissed, and I tell him, whatever. I go, "You need to get the recording from them because this is what they said." And so by this time, I've gone on a few podcasts and shared my story, and I went on a few more. So this is August the 4th. Now, here's the other thing why August the 4th is important. That's the birthday of Jermaine Gibson. And they know historically that on my social media, I would usually put out a memorial thing for him because of his passing. It's my belief that they showed up because they were either trying to find me, sad, depressed, emotionally distraught, maybe under the influence of like beer or something to support their red flag law case, mental issue.
If I may, at the time, this is August, this is after you've been released from custody.
Yes.
Were there, in terms of your bail, were there any prohibitions on alcohol or marijuana consumption or anything like that?
No, I don't believe there is.
Okay. So it would not, like, if they had caught you drunk, that you would have been in violation for consuming alcohol. I know some of the Jan 6ers weren't allowed consuming alcohol, I think, while on.
Yeah, there's nothing like that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And so they give me my electronics, they leave. So my attorney starts asking for this continually. We finally get to early December of 2021. And during this time, I've gone on a few shows and I've told everybody that part of the story. And I said, "Listen, once we get that audio, I don't care if a judge puts a gag order on me. I will release the audio and everybody's going to see it," because essentially you have an FBI agent saying that it's okay to commit perjury under oath so long as you're not helping your opponent. I go, so, and I'll deal with the consequences of being in
You ain't,
contempt of court.
you ain't getting that audio, Alpha. I'll tell you that much.
Well, the DA contacts my attorney the day before we go to court and says the FBI contacted us and said there's no audio recording of that contact. Now, there's audio contacts of every other contact they have with every other January 6th defendant that's out there. The DOJ says they argue that this is the biggest case for the DOJ in our nation's history. And you're going to go to the home of an alleged suspect and you're not going to record that contact. I'm not buying it. Now, I'm just little old Luna. I'm not significant in the big scheme of things here, but this is why they destroyed that audio. Special Agent Armenta is also the special agent that was handling the assault case for Officer Fanone.
Fanone is the guy allegedly had a heart attack after being tased, was the one who testified tearfully. He did an interview with someone. Oh, the guy from MSNBC who cried, "I want to thank you for your service." Okay, so that guy.
Yeah, the guy, Time Life, the poster boy from all of that. Well, the reason they got rid of that audio is because it would have been a Brady issue. And it would have compromised not only every case he's done, but specifically that one. Mm-hmm. So it becomes one of the dominoes to help collapse their narrative of lying, of what's going out there. So it's my belief that that's the reason that audio no longer exists. Now, during this time, like I said, we got a couple of pages for the warrant, and we've seen 3 different times they mentioned confidential informant, confidential citizen, CHS. So we do a motion to reveal the identity of the informant, because one of the 3 theories we have is it's someone from the agency or proxy to the agency that was trying to undermine that, court case, civil suit going on. The morning of that we get to court, the DA who is running for judge and has subsequently became a judge, imagine that, tells my attorney, the FBI just contacted me and said it was a typo. There is no informant. They meant to write anonymous party. Now I'll give it to you once. But you're going to tell me you made that mistake 3 times? And I guarantee you when we get the rest of the 100 and so pages of the warrant, it's probably in there dozens of times.
There's nothing to say. And the guy, what was his name? Kleinfeld. Not Kleinfeld. Klein Smith. Kleinfeld was the lawyer from Carlito's Way. Klein Smith is the FBI lawyer. Said it was just it was a clerical error that they modified evidence and then submitted it to a judge. And here, what they submitted, they'll have to backtrack it because I guess they would have to identify a confidential human source. Or it was anonymous the entire time, and then they did lie about it being a CHS so that it would lend more credibility when they go to a judge. If it's anonymous, what the hell? You're just taking anonymous shit from the internet.
So it's you lied then or you're lying now. Yep. Because in California, I'm still considered an expert witness on gangs and search warrants, and I've never done. I'm like 99.9% confident I've never done a warrant with an anonymous party. Really, nobody does because judges they don't like it. They know it could be a neighbor, ex-employee, ex-girlfriend. Like there's just so many motives. They're just not going to like that.
Well, it could be Antifa trolls on the internet. Oh my goodness.
But the opposite side of that spectrum is a confidential informant. A judge weighs that very high because he knows we've gone through the whole check the boxes, people's safety, identity, ongoing crimes. Like a judge gives a lot of credibility to that. So either you lied then to bring credibility, or you're lying now to protect that source because it's going to expose motive.
That is damned if you do, damned if you do, damned if you don't, and one way or the other.
So the other motion we filed at the time, and this is December of 2021. No, I'm sorry. Now we get into early 2022. We do a motion to suppress the felony charge down to a misdemeanor charge. And during that time, they've offered one plea deal. I rejected it. And when we go, I'm trying to get the order of events here correct. Yeah, so we do the motion to reveal the identity of the informant, and then we do the motion it's a 19B motion to bring it from felony to misdemeanor. The DA argues, trying to remember his name, Navarro, Deputy DA Navarro, now Judge Navarro, argues to the judge, we can't reduce this to a misdemeanor. This is a January 6th domestic terrorist. He's still tweeting. He's doing shows. He has a podcast. He's a threat to society. The judge rules in favor of them. It keeps it as he does it without prejudice. And about 7 minutes to 8 minutes later, we're now in the hallway of that court. The same DA the one that just argued that I'm a danger to society. You can't reduce it to a misdemeanor because everything we've been requesting has been denied in the criminal case. But remember, there's still the civil case, the gun violence protective order that they used to take all my guns. So there's a civil case and a criminal case that are paralleling each other. So the next that afternoon, now we got to go to civil court. And so my attorney says, hey, it doesn't matter. Everything that we're not able to get in the criminal case, we're going to get them on the stand now, and we're going to make them answer to all this shit. 8 minutes after we leave that courtroom, DA comes over, tells my attorney, you guys still got to go to the court in Indio, but just so you know, we're dismissing the case.
The criminal case.
The civil case.
Okay. Oh, I see. So they don't have to testify about it.
So we go to court in Indio, and in front of a lot of the DAs and the judge that I used to be in chambers with, in front of everybody that knows that my name's has been ran through the mug, we see the DA get up there and they dismiss the civil case against me. And that's the first, we won half the battle at that point. But just so everybody knows, they started this whole process with that. And now you're dismissing it. It's not like, it went to court and a jury made a decision. They're dismissing. They know I can sue them like crazy for this, but they're willing to take the chances with the lawsuit just to keep the agents from having to testify on the stand.
I'm just going to read one chat that just caught my attention. Call sign Cujo says, Viva, we need to blow his channel up bigly in the most positive way. Nonviolent metaphor. Blow it. We're going to get to that at the end, and I'm not going to forget. So they dismissed the civil. I mean, it's just the lawfare. And by the way, they'll maybe end up dismissing all the charges. The damage will be done. And if you don't screw up in the process, they won't be able to get you on, some sort of procedural violation while these bullshit charges were brought and carried out. Plus, you survived the initial incident, which was probably more than what they already wanted. You were in solitary for what, 36 hours, 2 days?
Yeah, about a day and a half.
And you get out and you go back to regular life, or you go back to your family.
Yeah.
Working a job are you able to work a job now?
So remember, I went from part-time to full-time. And that move actually put me back on probation with the Palm Springs Unified School District. And the pressure that they were receiving, they ended up letting me go. So that left me with just the canine job that I had, and, just trying to find ways to make ends meet. And then ultimately in mid 2022, the canine job wanted me to go to another state for an extended amount of time, which I can't do because I'm still out on bail right now. So anytime I leave the state, I need to do it with permission, and it needs to be temporary. And then two, I can't leave, babies at home, because the missus still has her full-time job. She's a CNA. So,
CNA,
but here,
hold on. What's the CNA?
Certified nursing assistant.
Okay.
They're the hardest, in my opinion. I think a lot of people agree with me. They're the hardest working people in the medical field. They do.
And most underpaid.
Most underpaid.
If California is anything like Canada.
Yeah. So during this process, I start to realize they're panicking because they've dismissed the civil case, which tells me they know what we're going to ask the questions nobody else knows to ask. And they start offering deals. And these deals, I've worked law enforcement. I'm like, you don't offer deals like that unless you're not confident in the case. Ultimately, this was about a month and a half ago when I went to my last hearing. It was a family settlement conference, and that got continued. They offer my attorney, they say, hey, what if we reduce it to a misdemeanor? Because I've told them to go pound sand every time. They said, what if we reduce it to a misdemeanor? No probation, no nothing. He just signs guilty to the misdemeanor. We'll immediately close the case. The next day he can file for expungement and the DA will support it. And I told him, you can go F yourself. We're going to go to trial. Now, my attorney, he's frustrated, and I understand. He's like, listen, dude, there's nothing better they can offer you. Like, that's the best they can offer you.
It's the Georgia RICO case sort of charges that some of the defendants have agreed to, which results in no criminal record, total expungement after 3 years. And some people say they're stupid for having pleaded. Others say they would have been dumb to say no.
Here's what I'll say, and I'll speak from the heart on this so people can understand. Worst case scenario for me in this corrupt system, I know that I'm looking at probably a guilty plea because the system's it's corrupt. So what I told my attorney is you need to fight for my appeal. So hopefully we're in the presence of a good president at the time that's trying to rectify these things. But worst case for me is 3 to 5 years. Now, I'm not saying I want to go through that. There's no way. I got a family that I don't want to abandon. I got a little girl that's 3, another one that's 7 months. The 7-month-old, I mean, can you imagine if dad's gone for 3 or 5 years? Like, I don't want that. But it's easier for me. I was willing to give my life as a Marine. I was willing to give my life as a cop. If I got to sacrifice 3 to 5 years of my freedom to get on the record everything that they've done, then so be it. There's a lot of people that are facing much harder sentences, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. When you're faced with that, and let me tell you guys, I'll be in debt the rest of my life. The amount that it costs to fight this, listen to all the stories. People are losing their homes, or losing. You can't get work. You know, I have an impeccable resume. When all this happened, I applied to these really great jobs, was immediately hired, offered bonuses, but then they do the background check, and this FBI flag pops up and they rescind it. So they make it impossible to have any type of, reasonable employment. So it's hard for people to continue to face that, especially when you're looking at people that are 40 and 50. In other words, you tell them to spend the rest of your life in prison. So those of us like myself that are positioned to where that sacrifice isn't as great as theirs, we got to take this fight. Because here's one of two things is going to happen in my situation. Either they're going to dismiss the case to keep their agents from having to testify, or they're going to have to go on the record and they're going to have to answer, why did you say this thing about perjury? And, maybe they think that there's no audio on their end. Maybe there's other audio that's out there. They're going to have to explain all the things that we're going to, because once we go to trial, they have to disclose the entire warrant. And I'm going to pick that thing apart.
Why do they not have to have already disclosed it? I mean, this is, I don't know. I mean, I presume this falls under not even Brady obligations, but just full disclosure. Like, how do you not have it yet?
They're supposed to. The law says you're supposed to.
It's atrocious, full stop. There's no but. And the fact that anybody can find some meaning in it or some strength and solace is on them, and not anything else. What I was going to ask. No, you go to a jury trial in California. Lord knows how that goes. And then some people are going to say you're risking 3 to 5 in jail. You can get it all out on the record. And if after all that they still say guilty and you're a cop going to jail, that's going to be a very, very, very long 3 to 5 years.
It will, but I can survive it. It'll be a nightmare, but I can survive it. My God would not have allowed me to be in this position unless he's going to see me through it. And it doesn't always mean it's going to be easy. But here's the thing. Somebody has to get them on record. Somebody does. Because if I take a plea, everything they've done from fabricating evidence, exculpatory information, Brady information, destroying evidence, lying, the cover-ups, all of that, there's no accountability for it. And on top of that, I've been debanked. Early on in 2021, Bank of America shut down my banks. I'm a quad S'er. Anytime I go to fly, I'm subject to the special treatment.
Say what the quad S'er means for those who don't know.
So quad S is on our tickets. In the corner, there'll be these 4 S's. That's why they call it the quad S. And when I first experienced this would have been May or June-ish, around 2021. I went to the Ontario airport. I was going to do a K9 job that I was flying out to for a weekend. And when I get there, because I've flown a lot, they're taking forever at the desk where you check in. And I was like, everything okay? And so finally somebody comes over, and I'm talking like 30 minutes right there. And they let me go. I go to oversize to check in my stuff. And now I get to where the TSA is, the fun part that we all like. And as soon as I get there, I see a little red flash on the guy's screen. He stops everybody. They clear everybody out of the little module area. And this team of TSA guys comes over. This guy has a clipboard with a plastic sheet on it. And he goes and he starts reading this whole thing. If you want to continue to fly, you got to do this. This is a random audit is what they call it.
Bullshit.
And so, yeah,
random my ass. Okay.
So you get there and you take off everything. It's just, you're down to just t-shirt, jeans, socks are off. They open your luggage to go through everything, your electronics. They run you through the x-ray one. They run you through the spinning one. I mean, the whole process took about 40 minutes. And meanwhile, I feel bad for the people that are waiting because they're all waiting. Nobody can come through that until they're done with me. So finally, when they move me off to the side, they open it, they go to business as usual. I'm still, bare feet and my jeans and my t-shirt, and I have a Marine Corps tattoo on my forearm. So the guy sitting there that's at the machine, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, devil dog, what'd you do to get on this list?" And I said, "Well, I'm glad you're telling me it's a list because everybody else is telling me this is random." He goes, "No, man, you're on the list." I go, "Should I expect this when I get to Dallas Fort Worth?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "All right." And sure enough, when I went to fly home from Dallas Fort Worth, it was the same treatment. And then later on, it started to come out. We started to realize it was happening to other people, and there was this list, that they were denying, which ultimately we found is Quad S, which means it's the highest level of alert that you can have before they revoke your ability to fly. So, and here's what's dangerous. Not only do you go through that, but the entire time that I'm now in the terminal, I'm being followed. I'd recognize undercovers. I did it. You're being followed everywhere, bathroom, everywhere. And then when you finally get to, the little tunnel thing to get into the plane, they pull you aside again, check your carry-on again. They swab your hands again. They run the dog on you again. Now I know I'm a good person. Imagine if you're getting onto that plane with
Dude,
me.
I'm scared. I once saw a guy getting on a plane. His clothes was in a laundry bag, and I was like one of those aerated laundry bags. I was scared. If I see this, I'm a neurotic guy. I'm scared.
And that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, these poor people, they're probably wondering, who is this dude? Is he a terrorist? You start thinking all this. But here's the other part that people don't think about. You're utilizing resources now on me that could actually be searching the terminal for a real threat. Mm-hmm. And now you've taken that away to actually look for someone that's dangerous. And now I'm not the only person this is happening to. This is happening to hundreds of people as they fly that are on this list.
Well, it happened to Brendan Strock, another one of the Jan 6ers. And whenever Brendan, not that anyone looks like more of a threat, looks can be deceiving, but some people look like less of threats than others, especially given the charges that they're facing. Oh, wow. Okay.
Brandon's a beautiful looking guy. Come on. What threat?
And I met him in person. He looks just as cinematic in person as he does on the internet. No, he said the same thing. It's like it's nuts, wasted resources, scares the shit out of everybody else getting on the plane. And for what his charges weren't even, at least yours, in theory, serious charge, unlawful possession of a banned assault rifle. I mean, that sounds scary. Two things actually. Before I want to ask where everything is at now, but do you have time to come over to Locals and take some exclusive questions there?
Absolutely.
Okay, now I want to do three things. There were 3 Rumble rants here. On the Rumble side, it says, Crash Bandit, they are using summary judgment a lot in our U.S. judicial system lately. Absolutely, Crash. I mean, see the way they get around even giving you a fair trial. Bench Brat says, I teared up in the shower when Alpha said he joined the day after 9/11 to find out it's all a lie must hurt. I'm going to save that question for Locals because that's off topic, but I wanted to ask you that. And I'm Not Your Buddy Guy says, I am genuinely sickened how corrupt and evil many within the federal government are, for crying out loud, needing to investigate anyone who buys a Bible. It's like evil wears feds like a skin suit. Where are things with you now? Do you have a trial date?
The Family Settlement Conference got continued to March the 7th. So 2.5 more months we go to that. We're going to request the discovery that we still haven't got. Because I told my attorney, we're not going to trial, man, until they give us the stuff that we need. So I imagine we're going to get a date continued after that to get the discovery. I don't see how a judge is going to let them get away with not giving us discovery. And at some point, I think probably maybe approaching summertime or during the summer, he's going to make them give us discovery. And then once they give us discovery, I think we got 30 days and we go to trial. So I think we'll probably be looking at trial either in the summer or in the early fall this year. I think we're looking at trial.
The one question I'm not leaving for our Locals part. You have a podcast. Give everybody the links. I'm going to put them in the pinned comment, but how can people help you? And it's got to be, I know there's more than one click. I'm going to put the 1 clicks in the comment section, but tell people what you're doing now, where they can help you, how they can help you, and where they can find you.
Yeah. If you want to, give my family a gift and help us with this fight, I have a Give Send Go set up. It's givesendgo.com/defend Patriot Luna. And then my podcast, the only reason that my podcast even exists is because of this fight. I got frustrated. My attorneys gave me the green light, and on August 30th of 2021, I started the Alpha Warrior Show, and it's on Rumble. And you guys get to get my take and perspective on things, and guests that I bring on, get to do things from a different perspective.
bringing this up in real time so you can confirm with your own voice this is the proper,
Yeah.
this is the appropriate.
That's the correct one right there.
Okay. Amazing. Okay, well, good.
And that beautiful little girl is now 3 years old.
Look at that. Just soft little cheeks. Oh my goodness, like soft like velvet.
That's the little one they left by herself in the bassinet.
And I was Googling Cain Velasquez before because the profile pic that we used for the thumbnail, I was like, and it clicked while we were live. Cain Velasquez. Hold on. I'll bring up that's the thumbnail. Does Alpha have a donation site? It says Arkansas Crime Attorney. We just got it. Okay, and I think the link is here. Link here. I'll put all the other links in there, but the Give Send Go is arguably, but not arguably, the most important. Not that anybody cares about CommieTube, but are you also on CommieTube with your channel?
I started off there, but YouTube, Twitch, all them didn't waste no time to take me off and deplatform me. So it's just Rumble.
Any reasons given to ask the absurd question?
The one on the final strike on YouTube, I was doing a live show with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and they deplatformed me in the middle of the show. They didn't wait for me to finish.
God forbid, Dr. Sherry should, medical misinformation. I mean, at least they shut down a buddy of ours. It was a clerical mistake. They brought it back up, but when you talk crypto, apparently that's also anything contrary to full control over the populace raises immediate flags. So you've been yeeted from YouTube.
Yeah. So people can you can find me on Rumble, and two different channels on Twitter, X, whatever you consider it now.
Have I, as far as the important details of the story, I think we've covered all of them. Have I not asked anything that I should have asked?
No. You actually did a phenomenal job.
Dude, I had a skeleton. We go there's tangents, but there's tangents. I have the skeleton of your story, but I didn't want all the details because I like to learn things in real time. That's it's I can't get past the initial. I can't get past the initial raid. It's obvious what the purpose was. Okay, everybody, what we're going to do here, because there are some questions on locals, and I got the important one, and it has to relate to whether or not you regret your service or whether or not you feel that you've been lied to. But save it for vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Everybody, link to locals, and I will put up this entire interview on YouTube tomorrow. I'm going to put all your links in this after we stop going live. Make sure I didn't leave anything here. Okay, I think we got everything. We got everything on the Rumble side. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to end it on Rumble. Come on over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And I'm also going to try to sell you on locals, but that'll be there. Okay. Ending on Rumble. Everyone will know where to find you. And locals, here we come. Now, this is the personal question. Alpha, I mean, there's the senators that you have, Duckworth, Senator Duckworth, who served, sacrificed, and apparently still supports the regime and buys into the regime. Your experience in Iraq, do you feel like you were lied to and exploited by the government?
Well, absolutely. I believe, I know I was lied to. As a matter of fact, to answer the question, do I regret the decision I made joining the Marine Corps? That absolutely not. I know I did it for the right reasons. I know the brothers that I was there with did it for the right reasons, and I'm not ashamed of that. The other thing that I realized is, if you remember, I said they were trying to get me to join JAG. And I said I didn't want to. I wanted to go over there and I wanted to slay bodies. I wanted to take names for what they did to our country. I went over there with this hate in my heart because these people, we were told, hated us. And then I met these people and they didn't hate us. Everything that we're being told, now granted, there's the ones that fight us, but the regular people welcomed us. They actually were terrified when we would leave their little towns. Most of them didn't even know what the heck was going on. And I remember struggling with, are we going to create future enemies? And I mean, I was just a kid. I'm 21 years old, trying to make this all make sense. And, but you got guys that are shooting at you. If people are shooting at you, you're going to shoot back. I mean, that part is the easy equation. But it was later on in life, I know everybody talks about the red pill. I'm very new to that. My brother's been the conspiracy theorist growing up, my little brother. He would call me working, tell me something. I'm like, dude, don't call me with that craziness. He loves calling me now saying, I told you so. He exploits the hell out of that. But what kind of red pilled me to make this all make sense was I was watching the news one day and I'm like, who's this Jeffrey Epstein dude? Why does everybody care whether this guy killed himself or not? You know?
Oh, dude,
And so
you really are quite new to the red pill then.
so I start looking it up and I use my detective training, all the stuff that I've been trained, and I go down that rabbit hole that turns into the thousands of rabbit holes that are there. And once you see it, there's no going back. And which leads me to the 9/11 stuff and the Building 7 stuff and all this stuff that's considered controversial. And I started to realize they exploited my patriotism and so many young Americans' patriotism. We were men willing to go and fight for our country, die, orphan, my little girls at the time because we love our country so much, and they exploited that. And so that part hurts. It hurts when you figure out the one that betrayed you is the one you loved. But then I also started to learn that there's a difference between the government and the United States. I love the United States. I love our people. I'm not very happy with the government. And so that's kind of my long-winded answer of whether I regret it. So I don't regret the Marine Corps. I am pissed that they took advantage of me.
I want to get the Mark Twain quote. I don't want to screw it up. Love your country unconditionally. Government when they deserve it. Let's see if that brings it up. Mark Twain, patriotism is supporting your country all of the time and your government when it deserves it. It's a good line.
I like that.
Okay, now I was going to ask this one early on, but I don't want to come off as too pretentious, but I'm going to do it anyhow. It's fascinating. I don't know if you ever thought about this. What is the earliest memory that you have of life?
The earliest memory I have of life, it's kind of a sad one. So, but it's the earliest one.
It's some people believe it's indicative of, the rest of life.
So, my dad was a great father. So I want to, start it with that. But I think I was probably around 2 or 3, and I remember that my mom was yelling at my dad for something. But he did drink. He was a drinking man. Not abusive, but he was a drinking man. And I remember he went outside and he's sitting on the stairs to the apartment complex going up. He's like on the second or third step and the door was open. So I remember going out there and I remember just sitting next to him. And I remember we talked, or he was talking to me. I don't remember anything he was saying, but I remember just looking up at him and I remember thinking that my dad just looked broken. Like he just looked so just broken at that time. And I remember just hugging his knee. And that's my earliest memory that I actually asked him about later on in life because I wanted to know what that conversation was about. And I was curious if he remembered. And he did. He actually, he remembered it just as much as I did. And he had explained that my mom had gave him a choice, stop drinking or leave. And that when I went out there, he was telling me that I was worth, because my brother wasn't born yet, that I was worth stopping drinking for, and that he was telling me how he was going to change and he was going to be the dad he's supposed to be. And that's what that conversation was. So I learned that later on in life, but that's my earliest memory.
That's not a sad memory. That's actually, that's an optimistic, beautiful memory, depending on the perspective. Okay, that's it. That is indicative. That reflects perspective in life as well. Like later on, in terms of you dealing with how you deal with this. This is the other question. I'm going to get some questions that we have in our comments. How do you deal? You're a religious man?
I am. So here's a long-winded one. If you guys allow me. So growing up, I had friends that were Jewish, friends that were Mormon, friends that were Christian, like friends from all the different, different religions that are out there. And I wouldn't get invited to church. Sometimes it was a girl I was dating, whatever. And my dad let me go. Now, remember, like we were a strict Catholic family, but he would let me go to these other churches. And I even went to a Christian church because they're so much more funner than a Catholic church for a long time. And so I remember asking him, man, this was a lot later in life. I was actually a dad, by the time we had this conversation, and a cop. So I had to be in my early to late 20s. I go, hey, Pops, we were Roman Catholic. Why'd you let me go to all these churches? And he goes, I didn't care what name you called God. I just wanted you to know God. And however you found it, I was going to be okay with that. And it meant a lot. So that being the fact, I grew up in a very religious family. I know the Bible. Don't ask me to quote stuff, but you can talk about stuff and I can have the conversation. And I've had a relationship where it's been really high, and then I've had relationships where it's been really low. I've made more promises to God that I've broken, and where He's fulfilled His end of the bargain. But there's about 3 or 4 times in my life, this being the hardest, where I've really been brought to the foot of the cross and asking for help. And if I was to combine all those times, they're not as hard as the fight now. But here's the one thing: in each one of those times, I just didn't know how life was going to look or how I was even going to get through it. And at the end of those, hindsight, I always ended up better than where I was before that tribulation started. He's never failed from that. So I know if his record is anything to judge now, that's going to happen this time. That when this is all over, however that looks and however painful it is to go through, that life for me is going to be better at the other end of this, and my faith is there. But now when it comes to religions, I asked a lot of questions growing up. There were things I saw, especially and all churches I think have things that could be questioned. But specifically for me in the Catholic Church, I was like, well, why can't my aunt go get the Eucharist no more? And Dad explained, well, she's divorced, and she has to go, before a bishop to get an annulment, and all this stuff costs money. So as I got older, I was like, so you're telling me someone's got to spend money, go plead with someone just to take the body of Christ, like the most sacred of sacraments? And that sounded like business to me. That didn't sound like God. And I just saw these things. So one, and like I said, my mom is the strong, brilliant one, and I haven't given her so much love in this conversation. But she taught me, never have faith in man, because man's going to let you down. The church is just a building at the end of the day. Your faith always needs to be completely invested in God. That's it. Man will always make mistakes, and man will always corrupt the church. God won't. And so I lived by that. And so I believe in my creator. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. This is my belief. But I do believe that man has really corrupted a lot of the churches and exploited people's faith because it's so important. And I honestly don't think that there needs to be a middleman, between us and God. I think fellowship is important because that's how we profess our faith. That's, examples. But at the end of the day, the one thing that I know is an absolute is that God is real, and I believe in him, and my faith is in him.
I'm going to read some more. It's beautiful. We got USA Now, who made a meme that says, we're on at the same time as Russell Brand. There's a replay. Don't worry about it. Then we got a meme from USA Now who says, it's a woman screaming. It says, I know globalists and deep state did false flags and psyops against the people, but I'm enlightened, so I will focus on my own life to survive. And then there's a cat calling her a Pussy. Denise Ann 2 says, Alpha, I'm so glad you're getting your story out. I love watching your content. And sit rep with CanCon. We got Bill Brown, who says, "Oorah." Bill Brown was, I believe, also United States Marine Corps. Bill, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm fairly certain. I know you served. I know you're a USMC. Susie C says, thank you both. Great show today, but it keeps lagging out on my end. We'll rewatch later, says, my name is Trinity. Victor Cardone says, Viva, great interview. Whatever happened to our country when regular Americans are now the enemy? Totally disgraceful. Pam Walker, he needs to contact Mr. Barnes at the Free American Law Center. I'll send you that link afterwards. Well, I'll send you that. It's the stories. I mean, I knew the broad outline, but not the details. Bill Brown says, Chris Wray is still refusing the court order to hand over Seth Rich's laptop. Judge ordered them to turn it over 2 months ago. Mighty Pay, amazing interview, devastating and infuriating story. Godspeed, Alpha. Ryan PD 911, does Alpha have any hope for the future, considering the fact that the head of the British intelligence said today that the potential election of Trump is an existential threat to Britain? They just won't give up. What's your the last answer is going to give a bit of the answer to this. What's your overall optimism for the future?
I absolutely believe America is going to stand at the end of this. America is going to be what it needs to be at the end of this. I think things are going to get a lot worse. What I've learned over the last, we could say 6-7 years, especially when it comes to patriotism, I always thought that our patriotism was bar none to anywhere in the world. But then I saw January 6th happen. Forget about my story, just January 6th. And I saw the effect that it had on the populace. People were afraid to protest. Like, it's your constitutional right to redress your government peacefully. And people were afraid to do that. And what I saw was that we, as Americans, got so comfortable with the conveniences of life that we were going to sacrifice liberties and freedoms, and that we were going to do it because there's the hopes that other people are going to fight that battle for us. And what we're realizing, and there's this quote, I don't know if you can find it, hopefully I don't butcher it, but hard times breed strong men breed easy times breed weak men. And unfortunately, we're in that cycle where as a nation, we got really lazy.
Well,
And we handed
you forgot the last one. It's the weak men create hard times.
and weak
That's the
men
punch.
create hard times.
And we're there, and they show a picture of Biden and they show a picture of Trudeau, and we're looking at weak men who are in the midst of creating very hard times. There's another one similar, but it relates more to the willing relinquishing of freedoms. In Japan, every culture has a different one. Japan, it's rice paddies to rice paddies in 3 generation. The Scottish say the father buys, the son builds, the grandchild sells, and his son begs. And in China, it's wealth never survives 3 generation. But substitute the word wealth for freedom. It's the people who had to earn it that appreciate it. It's the people who are born into it that think it's always been that way. And then it's the next generation that doesn't appreciate it and will, give it away for a nice can of Mountain Dew.
Yeah. And so I actually thought that when they came after the kids, with the injections or with CRT and all this, gender reassignment stuff, I actually thought that was going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And unfortunately, it wasn't. And then that brought me to the conclusion that I think the only thing that's really going to piss America off to the point where we reach that precipice is when they come after the money, and people actually can't buy food. And I think that's where we're going to be awake and take back what we need and reinstitute government and laws the way it needs. So because there's a lot that I've learned in this, as a cop in the police academy, you cover the Constitution, but you don't cover it to the level or in depthness that people probably think. You focus on Fourth Amendment, things like that. And what I know hindsight is there's actually a lot of laws that we enforce that are unconstitutional. And our penal code book it's fatter than a Bible. I mean, that thing needs to get stripped down. If you look at one thing I've learned from being on this side of the coin is our plea bargain system is punishment. It's we reach pleas through threats. So that means we're getting people to say guilty to things. And obviously there's criminals out there that do things, but we're getting innocent people to plead guilty to things because of the fear or the inability to have a fair fight. That needs to be revamped. So I support law enforcement still. I support the thin blue line. I support the badge. I don't believe it needs to be defunded, but I believe it needs to be completely overhauled. I think our young men and women need to be taught law enforcement the correct way. I think it needs to be taught in a way that bridges the relationship between the community and law enforcement so there's trust again. And the only way you have that trust is through transparency. And most of the young guys in a black and white police car, they support that. It's when you start getting into the leadership that starts to deteriorate. And by the time people go through their process in their career, they just fall into the funnel of that. But if we teach these guys in their first 5 years of law enforcement the correct way to do it, I mean, we can really shift the look of law enforcement in our country and probably the rest of the world.
It's Marcus Tullius Cicero says, more law, less justice, which is another one that I very much love. Don's wife, I pray that the TSA agent who told him that he is on a list doesn't get into trouble. Then we got Pasha Moyer with a meme. It says, rare photo of me waiting for justice from the FBI, and it's a skeleton sitting in a chair. And let me just make sure that I've gotten to all of the specific questions and the tipped questions I have. Now, let me see in the general chat. Anybody get any questions in here? Let me see what we got here. Does he think the WEF and globalists are behind all of the evil happening in our country, says Don's wife.
I think they're definitely at the top of the pyramid, but I have this saying, if we know their names, they're not the ones in charge.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, the WF, they become not a scapegoat, but the ultimate boogeyman. At this point, it's like, the WF's not responsible for prison abuse in America. It's just the separate industrial complex. And the government here, greedy for power. And as much as the WEF is greedy for global control, unelected, whatever, governments are greedy. And it's the proverbial blob that keeps on growing. Let me see if I haven't forgotten. I think we've gotten everything. Hold on. Let me see. One more question that I might have had. Oh, it's a personal one. These things have an impact on marriages. I think it's almost by design. They know that this has a negative impact on families. So even they can get you, they've gotten some of the Jan 6ers to take their own lives. And I'm not, and I think that's also just, there is some MFer sitting back there saying we'll get him one way or the other. This can have a massive corrosive effect on a marriage, a family. How are you as a family unit faring with all of this?
I'll tell you, one of the silver linings to this nightmare. So one, she's way hotter than I deserve. Like, she's gorgeous, just so everybody knows. Um, but when I met her, I was at the height of my life. Promotions. The news agencies know me because of operations and things. Like, it was great. It's easy to love somebody when you have everything: big houses, money, boats, toys. Like, I had a lot in life. So when all this started to unfold, then you're hit with the question, is this person going to stick around? And she did through the law enforcement thing. But that, even though it was a nightmare, still pretty obvious that I was going to win. When this FBI thing happened, then I really saw, man, she's not leaving. She's in the fight. Now, are there arguments because of it? Of course. Financial times, financial struggles, who else are you going to take it on than each other? You're under the same roof. And one of the things that I think probably breaks her the most is when I reject the pleas. She knows the easiest thing for our family is to take the plea deal. And that's all she wants. She just wants me. She just wants to stop worrying about me. And when I reject that, she knows that nightmare of me going away is still there. So sometimes, it's just tears. Sometimes it's arguments. But at the end of the day, she's still there. She's still in my corner. And she knows, because we've had the talk, because people have asked me. But here's the thing. If God grants me and I get to live to be in my 70s or 80s, like everybody else, I'm going to take my last breath, and I'm going to be, what am I going to be thinking about? And it's, did I live the best life that I could have lived? Did I leave those that I'm responsible something that they're going to be okay? And, did I ever compromise my character? Like, for me, that's important. And so the possibility is I may lose appeals. They may get everything to go their way, but I'll know I never took the knee. I'll know that the shootings I was in, my partner dying, the stuff from war, none of that's in vain, because I stood for what I said I believed in. And I leave my kids a role model that no matter how hard, my dad took on the government. Like, there's nothing that they won't ever be able to take on, and know that you'll be okay no matter whatever the result or consequence looks like, you can be okay. So, yeah, that's my answer to that.
All right, we got two more questions, or three actually now. It says, okay, freedom isn't free. Says, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times, those who remain. By author G. Michael Hopf. Bill Brown, USMC, says, what's your favorite color crayon? And then we got Pam Walker, who says, I don't blame her. Please tell her she and you are my heroes. And then in the broader chat, people are saying they love you. Okay.
Favorite color is green.
Green? That's a good color. Okay. Alpha, all the links are going to be in there afterwards. We're going to say our proper goodbyes after this. Locals. My son also wants to say something new, but he wants to say it off air. So we'll when he comes in a second. Everyone will know where to find you. Thank you very much for doing this. And Godspeed. But we'll keep in touch. We'll stay in touch, and we're going to talk after this. Locals, see you tomorrow. And Alpha, thank you very much.
God bless everybody.